Chapter 4096. Yiqing Luo chuckled. Why don't you let me guess, how did those two hall masters tell you about me? She moved her body and leaned against the back of the chair lazily. Her half-squinted eyes curled into a mocking arc. She said, At the auction in Without Embroiling City, they tried their best to protect Without Embroiling City? The Grand Judge's eyes shifted back to Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo continued, They tried their best to protect Without Embroiling City's mysterious maiden, the daughter of the Qiao family. Then, she paused and smiled even more, killed by me. Not only killed but also destroyed the evidence. They couldn't save Without Embroiling City's mysterious maiden. Is that so? What do you mean by this? The Grand Judge frowned. Although what Yiqing Luo said was slightly exaggerated. But it was almost the same as what the two hall masters said. Amu Qilan, because of a jade pendant you suspect me, and the Grand Judge's attitude towards me is obviously hostile. Yiqing Luo touched her chin as she gave a light smile. There's definitely a precondition, so you didn't hesitate at all to affirm that it's me. What are you trying to say? The more the Grand Judge listened, the tighter his brows knitted. Trying to sow discord? Yiqing Luo shook her head with a smile. In the dim carriage, the light was very dim, but the young lady's smile was still blooming like a flower, gorgeous beyond compare. We don't know how far this Linglong Palace will take. If we don't chat for a while, it'll be so boring. A trace of ridicule flashed past her eyes. If the Grand Judge thinks I'm trying to sow discord, just treat it as a joke, forget about it after hearing it. She would say these words to the Grand Judge. That was because Yiqing Luo had not detected any trace of evil qi from the Grand Judge. And the two hall masters deliberately concealed what happened in Without Embroiling City that day. At least it could prove that there was no relationship between the Grand Judge and secluded palace. Yiqing Luo also knew that. The reason why the two hall masters dared to lie to the Grand Judge, pushing Qiao Yulu's death to her. But it was to take advantage of the Grand Judge and the upper echelons of Linglong Palace. Such a big thing like the auction. The entire Earth domain suffered such a huge loss. Any random person would be able to find out the truth. But the people of the Linglong Palace had always thought highly of themselves and did not even bother to ask others. That was why Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu dared to push Qiao Yulu's death onto Yiqing Luo. He didn't mention it at all. How much effort had Yiqing Luo and the rest expended before they managed to spoil the plans of the Palace of Seclusion, saving the Earth domain? The ridicule in Yiqing Luo's eyes deepened by several notches. She suddenly moved closer to the Grand Inquisitor. The magistrate was startled and was about to attack Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo turned sideways slightly to avoid it and didn't go any nearer. Just like that, she looked at the Grand Judge with a faint smile and said in a low voice, If the Grand Judge doesn't believe me, you can go and ask the people in the outside world. On the day of the auction, what did your Without Embroiling City's profound fairy do? And who is to blame for her death? The Grand Judge's pupils dilated slightly as his brows creased slightly. Yiqing Luo pulled the distance between the two of them and sat back on her seat. If by then you still feel that Without Embroiling City's profound fairy's death is because of me, then I have nothing to say. Chapter 4097. But he had to admit it. Her heart was shaken by Yiqing Luo's words. After all, she was indeed disappointed with Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu's actions. Furthermore, the hatred these two had towards Yiqing Luo was too obvious. For some unknown reason, the thoughts of what Yiqing Luo had said in the Qiao residence in the room where Mu Qilan died surfaced in his mind. If someone really framed me, then your Linglong Palace is just a pawn in their hands. Chess piece. Could it be that the Linglong Palace had really been used as a chess piece to deal with Yiqing Luo? No, to say it was to deal with Yiqing Luo, it would be more accurate to say it was to contain Yiqing Luo. After all, the powerhouse behind Yiqing Luo wasn't just the Hell Palace, there was also the Qiao family from the Earth domain. And her biggest backing, the Imperial Palace. She was Di Zun's woman. If the Linglong Palace Hall really did something outrageous, they would definitely be killed. The Overlord would definitely not let the Linglong Palace off. No matter how high the status of the Linglong Palace was in the land. But, if the Overlord really wanted to use his full strength, the Linglong Palace would not be able to withstand it. For the Great Justice to be able to reach his current position in the Linglong Palace, he naturally had some brains. Although on the surface he was unmoved by Yiqing Luo's words. But in his heart, he had more or less taken Yiqing Luo's words to heart. About an hour or so later, the carriage finally came to a slow stop. The curtains of the carriage were pulled open. A ray of light shone in. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes, and after she adapted to the light, she walked out of the carriage. What entered his eyes was a tall and majestic building that resembled an ancient castle. It occupied a large area. It was comparable to the imperial palace which Yi Qing Luo had seen in Nirvana realm. The buildings around the castle were engraved with ancient and complicated totems. He looked very dignified and noble. On the outskirts of the ancient castle, more than a dozen Ling Long Palace's disciples dressed in lotus green robes were patrolling back and forth. Welcoming them were a few older women who walked out of the castle. The women's robes were similar to the disciples' robes. However, compared to ordinary disciples, their embroidery patterns were much more exquisite. From the looks of it, he should be someone with some status in the Linglong Palace. However, when they looked at the Grand Judicial Elder, their faces were filled with respect. "Welcome back, Grand Judicial Elder." The Grand Judge waved his hand and glanced sideways at Yi Qing Luo's direction before saying, "Shadowless City's mysterious maiden is dead and her corpse has been transported back. Is the Hall Master in the hall?" The women were shocked. Why is the Empyrean maiden of Shadowless City dead? The three mysterious fairies have only left the palace of Ling Long for such a short time, and two of them have already died. Could it be that someone is targeting the palace of Ling Long? The few ladies' gazes turned towards Yi Qing Luo in unison. "Grand Judicial Elder, she is the murderer who killed two of our Ling Long Palace's mysterious maiden. We specially brought her back to the Ling Long Palace because we want Palace Master to seek justice for the profound fairies." A slender figure jumped out of the other carriage. Hall Master Lu and Hall Master Ji alighted from the carriage. The few ladies' expressions had a huge change as the way they looked at Yi Qing Luo had a subtle change. "Everything has yet to be decided. Send Shadowless City's mysterious maiden's corpse to Shadowless Hall for an inspection first. I will bring her to see the Hall Master." The Grand Judicial Elder shot a glance at the two Hall Masters as he spoke calmly. Chapter 4098. Grand Judicial Elder, have you been deceived by that woman? Hall Master Ji's first reaction was what Yi Qing Luo had said to the Grand Judicial Elder when they were alone in the carriage. The Grand Judicial Elder glanced at her indifferently. Hall Master Ji seems to be especially concerned about Miss Ye's matters. Hall Master Ji's expression stiffened as she lowered her head. I'm just worried that she's so sinister and cunning that the Grand Judicial Elder would be cheated by her." The Grand Judicial Elder walked straight into the ancient castle indifferently. "This matter, I have my own plans, there's no need for you to say anything more." Hall Master Ji heard the Grand Judicial Elder's indifference and could only shut his mouth as he followed behind the Grand Judicial Elder. A group of people clustered together as they entered the Ling Long Palace. The ancient castle was brightly lit and the luminous pearls were hung high up, extremely dazzling. Moreover, the design and decoration were elegant and dignified. After they entered the Ling Long Palace, the few ladies who welcomed the Grand Judicial Elder spoke out. "Grand Judicial Elder, the Hall Master is not in the hall now." The Grand Judicial Elder's footsteps paused as he made a quick turn and headed towards another direction. "Then bring her to the judicial courtyard first, I will take care of her personally." The group of people headed towards the direction of the judicial courtyard. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu exchanged glances and were about to follow up. The Grand Judicial Elder suddenly looked at a lady beside him. "Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu are out and borrowing the reputation of the Ling Long Palace to flaunt their prowess, ruining the reputation of the Ling Long Palace. Lock them up first and wait for the Hall Master to return before we deal with them." "Yes." The lady replied respectfully. Following that, the two female disciples held Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu in their hands. The two of them struggled for a moment as their expressions turned extremely ugly. "Grand Judicial Elder, what do you mean by this? When did we ruin the reputation of the Ling Long Palace? Grand Judicial Elder, don't tell me you've really been bewitched by that demoness?" The two of them kept shouting. But the Grand Judicial Elder didn't even bother about them. Bringing Yi Qing Luo, he disappeared around the corner. The two hall masters were flustered and exasperated but didn't dare to struggle as they obediently allowed the female disciples to bring them to the dungeon. Yi Qing Luo followed by the Grand Judge's side, looking left and right with a satisfied expression. "Do you think that I taught them a lesson because of your provocation?" The Grand Judge glanced at her expressionlessly. Yi Qing Luo put on an innocent look. The judicial system has long been dissatisfied with Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu, and had long wanted to give up on the both of them. "What has this got to do with me?" The Grand Judge snorted coldly and didn't speak again. After sending the man to the judicial court, the Great Justice had arranged for many female disciples of the Ling Long Palace to stand guard outside the courtyard. He then warned Yi Qing Luo repeatedly not to play any tricks. He left in a hurry. Towards a stranger like Yi Qing Luo, the Linglong Palace's female disciples were extremely curious. But he didn't ask. Just like that, Yi Qing Luo was locked in an elegant guest room, not allowed to step out of the room. Yi Qing Luo felt that the great justice had purposely arranged this. Did he want her to receive the same treatment as Mu Qiulan? The chief judicial officer had either left to look for the palace master of the Linglong Palace, or to ask her about what she had said in the carriage. Yi Qing Luo wasn't anxious at all. She laid quietly on the bed, crossing her legs, and had no intention to escape from the room, just as she was locked in the room for about 1 hour. Chapter 4099. The room was silent. The surroundings were silent. This was Linglong Palace's turf. The surroundings were guarded by Linglong Palace's disciples. Who could it be? Who could get close to this room without a trace? Yi Qing Luo squinted her eyes as she vigilantly released her perception, sensing everything around her. In the air, the floating presence was very weak. If she didn't sense it carefully, she probably wouldn't be able to detect the presence of a second person in this room. Since you're here, why hide your head and show your tail? Yi Qing Luo spoke coldly with a solemn expression. She sat by the side of the bed, not heading towards the direction of her senses. Her eyes stared at that direction without blinking. After several breaths of silence, a black figure slowly entered her sight. That figure was tall and his footsteps were light and slow. He walked over. He stopped by the side of the bed, 5 steps away from her. His entire body was shrouded in a black robe concealing his face. Faintly, a pair of cold and dignified eyes could be seen. His entire body was emitting an extremely powerful oppressive aura. He looked mysterious, powerful and unfathomable. After Yi Qing Luo saw the person in front of her clearly, the solemn expression on her face froze. Her lips curled slightly as she gave a smile which didn't look like a smile. Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace, I didn't expect to be you. The person in front of her was not anyone else, but the Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace. To think that he would actually appear here. This was Linglong Palace. He just snuck in silently like this. Was he overly confident that he wouldn't be detected by Linglong Palace's people? Or he had long formed a cooperative relationship with Linglong Palace, so he could move around freely in this Linglong Palace? Yi Qing Luo? Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace gazed deeply at her face as his voice sounded a little hoarse. The current him no longer appeared as DMO Xian. That voice carried a very heavy layer. It sounded like a machine, blurring the original tone of his voice. It sounded extremely strange. What's the matter? Yi Qing Luo asked coldly. Sorry. He sighed softly as he apologized helplessly. I didn't know that because of me you would fall into this deadlock. Yi Qing Luo scoffed lightly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Didn't know? Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace, what are you trying to express? She tilted her head as she teased. Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace? Could it be that Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace really likes me? After setting me up, you came to me with all kinds of explanations. Oh, I didn't know, I didn't do it on purpose, I really didn't know anything. Did I foolishly believe you, Palace Master of the Nether Palace? The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace suddenly raised his head. His eyes under the black robe were fixed on her. He wanted to say something, but he didn't know how to explain it. I really don't know anything about this. What I said to you was from the bottom of my heart. The Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace said helplessly in the end. After a pause, he lowered his head, and his voice became suppressed. Regardless of whether you believe me or not, I still want to explain it to you clearly. Lord, Qin Palace, Ling, Palace, Lord, Ling, Long Ling Palace, Long Palace, Palace Palace. Palace Lord of Seclusion Palace's eyes under the black robe shut tightly. Not willing to look at the young lady's mocking gaze. He really didn't expect this. How could things be so coincidental? So coincidental that everything seemed to have been arranged long ago. Chapter 4100. He was able to leave the secluded palace quietly under his master's eyelids and meet Yi Qing Luo. All these were actually all arranged by his master. He was just a chess piece which was used by his master. He thought that it was because his ability was strong enough so his master didn't detect his abnormality. Actually, all these were all planned and arranged by his master. Secluded Palace Lord's heart was filled with guilt because of his own self-righteousness, causing Yi Qing Luo to be unable to explain clearly that when Mu Qiulan died, she was with him. To a place like Ling Long Palace. If Master wanted to deal with her, her situation would probably be very dangerous. Thinking of this, the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace clenched his fists tightly, as though he had made up his mind. Yiqing Luo, as long as you explain clearly that when Mu Qilan died, you were with me, then Ling Long Palace has no right to imprison you here. He looked at Yiqing Luo, and under the black robe, his eyes could be seen faintly, revealing an earnest expression. I'll go explain clearly to the Lord of Ling Long Palace. Yiqing Luo didn't reply but raised her slender brows with a smile which didn't look like a smile, as she crossed her arms and smiled at him. Secluded Palace Lord's body turned stiff. You don't believe me? Yiqing Luo laughed lightly, and her smile was filled with ridicule. You think I'm saying this to you on purpose, right? The Palace Master of Secluded Darkness Palace suddenly laughed. That low, hoarse and mechanical heavy metal voice. When he laughed, it was extremely ear-piercing. It was like a sawtooth scraping heavily in the eardrums. He was laughing. Yiqing Luo was laughing too. Only the meaning of their smiles were totally different. One ridiculed. Another was bitter. It wasn't that Yiqing Luo didn't hear the bitterness in his laughter. But she didn't take it seriously. Her lips curled as the corners of her lips curled into a faint smile. Yes, I indeed don't believe you. The tall figure of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace bent down slightly. It was as if something was pressing heavily on his body, making him unable to straighten his back. Pain and bitterness encircled his entire body. She really didn't believe him. She really thought that he was just trying to gain her favor by saying those words. In Yiqing Luo's heart. He really wasn't anything. Yiqing Luo fixed her gaze on the man in front of her. There wasn't a single trace of emotion in her eyes, and her expression was extremely calm. Regardless of whether what you said is true or false, I actually don't care. You and I are not the same kind of people. It doesn't matter whether I believe you or not. The so-called feelings you have for me, no matter if it's real or fake, do not need a result because there will never be a result in the first place. Every word was clear and decisive. To the Palace Master of the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. They were enemies to begin with. Even without Dmo Xian's existence, there would be no result between them. Right from the start, Yiqing Luo didn't have any extra feelings towards him. At most, he would only remember that he had once told Dmo Xian the place where she was locked up, allowing Dmo Xian to save her in time. That was just a favor. There was nothing else. The chest of the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace heaved. The surroundings were overflowing with black qi. His hoarse laughter was filled with bitterness. You're really heartless. But my heart just can't make me give up on you. His black robe fluttered. Like the ink-stained clouds, slowly dispersing. Chapter 4101. His hoarse voice drifted through the air. This matter is my fault. I'll think of a way to clear your name and also clear my name without affecting you. Yiqing Luo's eyelashes trembled slightly. His gaze slowly shifted to the direction where the man had disappeared. A stretch of nothingness. Only the vaguely floating yin qi in the air proved that he had indeed been here. To clear her name, she understood what he meant. He wanted to help her prove that she was not Mu Qilan's murderer. However, what the hell was this about clearing his name? He wanted to clear his name. This time, she was lured out of the treasure house by him to meet him alone, and this was used as evidence of Mu Qilan's murder. Did he really not know anything and was innocent? Yiqing Luo laughed lightly. His emotions were very faint. Actually, it really didn't matter if he was innocent or not. For her. After all, he was just a stranger. There were no other strange auras in the surroundings. Yiqing Luo then returned to the bedside. As soon as he sat down, a few ladies' respectful greetings came from outside the door. Mysterious Lady of Yen. Immediately after, the woman's angry voice could be heard. Get out of the way. Please calm down, Mysterious Lady of Yen. The Grand Judicial Elder has ordered that no one is allowed to enter this room. The woman guarding the door answered respectfully. Nonsense. The woman pushed him to the side. I clearly sensed his aura. It's here. Him? The gatekeeper was a bit confused. The Grand Elder of the Judiciary only brought a woman and placed her in this room. There's no one else. I'll know if there's anyone else in there. The woman said as she forcefully pushed the door open. Yiqing Luo heard the commotion outside and the creaking sound of her room door being pushed. Her but hadn't even warmed up yet? She had only been in Linglong Palace Hall for a short while. So lively already? One after another? Couldn't he let her have a good rest? Later on, he still had to brace himself to deal with the legendary Palace Master of Linglong Palace. Yiqing Luo was cursing silently when the room's door was forcefully pushed and obstructed by that lady and the female gatekeeper. Under such repeated actions, a pa sound was heard and the wooden door directly collapsed. Soon after, a slender figure strode in. The woman was dressed in a deep blue embroidered dress with a peony pattern. She looked extremely youthful and beautiful. Her facial features were regular, and she could be considered a beauty. A pair of mischievous and quick-witted eyes were searching for something in the surroundings. Yiqing Luo saw a sliver of cautiousness and anticipation on the lady's face. Anticipation? What did this woman hope to find in the room where she was imprisoned? It seemed like, did this woman just say, him? Did he sense his aura? Does it refer to the palace master of the Palace of Darkness? Just now, he was the only one who had appeared in her room. After a round of searching, the woman did not find the person she was looking for. His face immediately darkened. She bit her lower lip hard, her face showing a bit of grievance. Where did you hide him? The lady directly pointed the spearhead towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo? The woman's vision fell onto Yiqing Luo. Her face instantly frowned into a bundle. That pair of quick-witted eyes flashed past a tinge of treachery and jealousy. You are that woman who killed Mu Qiulan and Xiao Yulu? Chapter 4102. It really is you. A hint of hostility surfaced in the depths of the woman's eyes. What's your relationship with Brother Gong? Facing this young lady's inexplicable hostility and baffling question, Yiqing Luo asked, Miss, who are you? The woman's face stiffened and she pursed her red lips. I'm Wu Fu the mystic maiden of Winterless City. You've killed 2 mystic maidens of the main cities. Are you going to kill me next? Since you know, why are you still trying to get close to me? Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she looked at her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Mystic maiden Wu Fuer's face darkened. The 2 of them were stupid, that's why they were killed by you. But I'm different. If you dare touch me, the people of Linglong Palace will not let you off. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms as she looked at the lady who was clamoring in front of her. This Linglong Palace Hall really knows how to pick their Empyrean maiden. 3 Empyrean fairies from the main cities. Her appearance could be considered top-notch. And their styles were different. Xiao Yulu was the unattainable type of fairy. Mu Qiulan, on the other hand, was the mature and cool type. Wu Fu was the spoiled and mischievous type. These 3 Empyrean fairies had different appearances and styles. However, the 3 of them had one thing in common. That was the attitude of thinking too highly of oneself. Compared to the other 2, the Empyrean maiden of Smokeless City was clearly more arrogant and overbearing. Yiqing Luo, you'd better be obedient in Linglong Palace's territory. Wu Fuer saw that Yiqing Luo wasn't intimidated by her at all, and even looked at her with that ridiculing expression. A ball of fury surged in her heart. Her face darkened, and her eyes swept around the room again. Tell me, was Brother Gong here just now? Brother Gong? The palace master of Gloomy Palace was surnamed Gong? Looking at Wu Fuer's concerned attitude, could it be, Wu Fuer must have secretly fallen in love with the palace master of the Palace of Tenebrous Palace. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was really lucky with women. He slept with Mu Qiulan. Now he had Wu Fuer on top of that. Both of them were peerless beauties. So, what he said about liking her, and so on could not be taken seriously. The palace master of Netherworld Palace, whose sincerity was once again implicated for no reason. What are you laughing at? Wu Fuer's eyebrows creased tightly as she stretched out her hand to push Yiqing Luo. I'm asking you a question, can't you hear me? Her hand had yet to reach Yiqing Luo. A sharp pain came from his arm. She let out a blood-curdling scream. Her wrist was grasped by 2 white and slender fingers in a seemingly nimble manner. He wanted to struggle. However, those 2 fingers were like boulders, not moving at all. She almost broke the bones in her hand. You dare. Wu Fuer's face was pale from the pain, and cold sweat beaded on her forehead. The waves of pain seemed to emanate from his bones. Yiqing Luo forcefully flung Wu Fuer's hand away as her lips curled into a cold sneer. Be careful, don't get touchy, I don't know how to be gentle with the fairer sex. Wu Fuer's face was extremely pale as she held onto her wrist as her eyes turned red from the pain. Even though Yiqing Luo had let go, she still felt waves of intense pain coming from her bones. Mysterious Lady Yan. When the ladies outside the door saw that, all of them rushed in with a terrified expression. The female guards' expressions were filled with terror. Mysterious Lady Yan, are you all right? Chapter 4103. Hearing Wu Fuer's order, Wu Fuer's eyes widened. The female gatekeepers looked at each other. For a moment he could not make up his mind. After all, Yiqing Luo was brought back by the Grand Magistrate. They only asked them to look after Yiqing Luo and not allow her to leave the room. There was no need to interfere with anything else. But they did not dare to disobey the orders of the mysterious Lady of Yama. On one side was Yan Zuanf and on the other side was the Great Justice. This put them in an extremely difficult position. The female gatekeepers did not move. To Wu Fuer, this was akin to giving Yiqing Luo a tight slap on her face. Immediately her face darkened. "Are you all dead? Can't you hear me?" The female gatekeepers hesitated. After weighing the pros and cons, they still flocked towards Yiqing Luo. 10 overladies immediately surrounded Yiqing Luo. One of the women advised in a low voice, "Miss Yi Yanxuanu is the granddaughter of our Wu Yan Hall's Wu Yan Hall master. If you want to be safe and sound in Linglong Hall, you better apologize to Yanxuanu and give in, granddaughter?" This Wu Fuer was actually someone from the Linglong Palace? She had thought that the 3 Empyrean fairies of the Earth Realm were chosen by the major forces and families of the 3 main cities. It was no wonder that Wu Fuer's temper and arrogance were so much more flamboyant than the other 2 Empyrean fairies. As it turned out, their backer was the Linglong Palace Hall. The few ladies took action at the same time and were about to seize Yiqing Luo. Ah! Several screams rang out. Wu Fuer's smug smile froze on her face. In his ears there were screams. Following that, many lotus green figures flew backward and crashed into her. Yiqing Luo. Wu Fuer's expression darkened. She stomped on the ground and flew into the air. Those Linglong Palace's disciples who were sent flying, all fell to the ground. Wu Fuer didn't even look at those people. Her 5 fingers formed into claws and turned into sharp blades. They were like fine iron and cold ice, reflecting a piercingly cold light. Her figure moved and she had already overtaken Yiqing Luo. His attack was filled with killing intent. It was obvious that he was furious. The violent and sharp profound light was filled with killing intent. Damn Yiqing Luo. How dare he be so arrogant? She had been slapped in the face again and again, making her lose face. He would let her know the consequences of being arrogant. The falling profound rays and the attack which was filled with murderous intent made Yiqing Luo's slender brows rise again. Wu Fuer was slightly more powerful than the other 2 mysterious fairies. The claw came down. It carried a majestic and thick profound energy. If it wasn't for Yiqing Luo's quick reaction, this claw could probably leave a huge hole in a person's body. Yiqing Luo took half a step back, her fingertips moved slightly and the enchanting red light in her hands swept out in an alluring arc. It was like a blazing flame, burning brightly. In an instant he blocked Wu Fuer's sharp claws. Wu Fuer was shaken by the Shen energy. The expression on his face became more and more sinister. Her delicate little face became ferocious. "All right. Good job." This was the first time that Wu Fuer, who was used to being domineering in the Linglong Hall, had been given the cold shoulder. She had not expected Yiqing Luo's guts to be so unyielding, totally not playing her cards according to the norm. The moment he made his move, she had no way out. If she retreated, she would be unwilling. Moreover, her reputation would be swept away. Thinking of this, the expression on Wu Fuer's face became even more vicious. That pair of lively big eyes were filled with a bloodthirsty ferocious beast, overflowing with a vicious aura. Since Yiqing Luo was looking for death. Chapter 4104. The female disciples of the Linglong Palace, who had been blasted out of their rooms and were lying on the ground, looked at the scene before them anxiously. The maid who had followed Wu Fuer left quietly and ran towards the direction of the judicial courtyard. Wu Fuer's attacks were swift and violent. Every single move was filled with murderous intent, and it became more and more ferocious. It was totally different from her appearance. Yiqing Luo had already seen through Wu Fuer's attacks after exchanging a few blows with her, and because of that, just as Wu Fuer attacked again, Yiqing Luo had already made use of her skills to break all her attacks and forced her to retreat several steps. Wu Fuer's face turned slightly pale. Her chest was heaving up and down due to her heavy breathing. A pair of sinister eyes, like a poisonous snake, stared venomously at Yiqing Luo. "Do you still want to fight?" Yiqing Luo smiled at Wu Fuer with a relaxed expression, as though she wasn't affected by Wu Fuer at all. This was the Linglong Palace after all. It wasn't her turf. Yiqing Luo had no intention to kill. She wanted to make a move to warn the others in case a bunch of boorish people popped in every few days in the Linglong Palace. She didn't have the time to deal with them. Wu Fu Air only felt that this smile was to humiliate and ridicule her. Her facial features became even more twisted. Slut. She took a deep breath and her profound energy burst forth once again as she charged towards Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as a mocking smile appeared on her face. Her hands moved. The glower flame fan on her fingertips opened up. The coquettish profound light turned into a huge dragon as it bared its fangs and brandished its claws towards Wu Fu Air. The rich red light flickered continuously. The biting cold and violent profound light whistled in the air. Stop. Suddenly a loud shout was heard. Following that, Yiqing Luo felt a huge pressure descending from the sky. Almost at the same instant that the terrifying aura attacked him, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him. Yiqing Luo's fingers retracted. She quickly gathered all her profound energy around her body and formed an enchantment barrier. Her footwork moved and her body moved swiftly. At the same time, bam bam bam. Deafening explosions and explosions resounded throughout the place. Yiqing Luo's front foot had just left. The entire house collapsed with a loud bang. The profound light vibrated, and the remaining power caused ripples to appear in the air. Such powerful strength, Yiqing Luo's pupils dilated slightly. He was panting a little. Fortunately, she reacted quickly enough. He managed to dodge the sudden attack in time. How dare you behave so atrociously in the Linglong Palace? His deep voice was filled with profound energy. Every single word was like a blow to one's eardrum, falling heavily into one's heart. Yiqing Luo finally stabilized her footsteps and had yet to see clearly who the person who suddenly appeared was. Then a green whirlwind like a piercingly cold sharp blade, cut through the sky and chopped down. The huge green light blade was like a mark falling from the sky. Yiqing Luo suppressed the shock in her heart and swiftly took a few steps back. He quickly raised his arm, and the devouring flame fan burst into a blazing red light, blocking the green light blade. When the glowing flame fan collided with the sharp blade, Yiqing Luo only felt a numbness in her arm. Her body was forced to take another step back by this majestic aura. The huge pressure hit her in an instant. Yiqing Luo's face turned slightly pale, and there was a dull pain in her chest. She pursed her lips tightly, suppressing this uncomfortable feeling, and circulated the profound energy in her body, trying to contend against this force. Chapter 4105. Under the confrontation of the two profound energy. There was a loud explosion. In all directions, there was a large area of light that was attacking. The houses within the radius of 100 miles started to shake. A few cracks seemed to have appeared in the air because of this. Yiqing Luo's breathing was heavy as she pressed her chest and looked towards the direction of the attack. Not far away, a few figures were approaching quickly. Those people were dressed in lotus green robes, which were slightly different from the other female disciples. At the very front was an elder of about 50 years of age who was supporting Wu Fuer with one hand. His hair was tied up neatly and there was a gloomy air in between his brows. The elderly supported Wu Fu Air as his venomous and arrogant gaze shot towards Yiqing Luo. On seeing that Yiqing Luo was safe and sound, there was a slight change in his gaze. She raised her chin slightly as her tone was filled with questions. Who do you think you are? How dare you behave atrociously in Linglong Hall? How dare you touch the granddaughter of my Yen Free Hall's hall master? While the elderly was questioning, Wu Fu Air pouted as she stretched out her hand in front of the elderly. Grandmother, look at my hand. It hurts. The elderly held Wu Fu Air's wrist as she lowered her head to take a look. Instantly, her eyes were covered with a layer of frost. She raised her head coldly and looked at Yiqing Luo as she questioned coldly, my granddaughter's hand, were you the one who hurt it? Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she met the elderly's gaze without any change in expression. Yen Free Hall's hall master? That was Wu Fu Air's grandmother? Her place was really bustling. One after another. Even the main hall's hall master was here. Then next, would it be Linglong Hall's hall master's turn? Yiqing Luo wasn't too clear about Linglong Hall's hierarchy. But she knew that this Yen Free Hall's hall master was not on the same level as Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu. Hall Master Ji and Hall Master Lu should be a small hall master of a branch hall. And this Yen Free Hall, according to the names of the three main cities in the Linglong Hall. It should be the Linglong Hall's main hall, one of the three halls' hall master. From the strength of this hall master earlier, the elderly's ability was definitely very strong. At the very least, if they were to fight, she wouldn't be able to gain the upper hand. While she was sizing up the old man, Hall leader Wu Yen was also carefully examining her. Towards Yiqing Luo's name, Hall master Wu Yen had actually heard of it. However, he did not take it to heart. The real reason he remembered this name, and it was because of this Yiqing Luo who had killed two of Ling Long Palace's mysterious maiden. The Empyrean maiden that their Ling Long Palace had painstakingly nurtured. It had only been a month since he left the Ling Long Palace. Just like that, two people died. Could it be that the next one would be her granddaughter? The hall master of Wuyan Hall was worried that something like this would happen, so he summoned his granddaughter back from Wuyan City. Unexpectedly, in the territory of the Ling Long Palace, Yiqing Luo was actually so audacious to try and kill Wu Fu'er. This was simply not putting their Ling Long Palace hall in their eyes. She was just a little girl. She was just relying on her beauty and the backing of Di Zun. She didn't believe it. Would the Overlord make things difficult for the Ling Long Palace hall because of a little girl? Thinking of this, an obvious murderous intent flashed past Hall Master Wu Yan's eyes. That murderous intent did not escape Yiqing Luo's eyes. Chapter 4106. Yiqing Luo, you should be clear of your current status. Seeing Yiqing Luo not answering him, Hall Head Wu Yan's expression turned extremely ugly. This was the first time she had been ignored like this. Hearing Hall Head Wu Yan's words, Yiqing Luo's lips curled into a faint smile. His gaze was also very indifferent. He looked at Hall Chief Wu Yan calmly and said, "So what if I am the one who injured him? How what a great, so what if?" Hall Leader Wu Yan's eyes were sharp as he sneered, "You have the lives of two people from Ling Long Palace on your back. Now, he still dares to behave so unscrupulously and arrogantly in the Ling Long Palace. Do you think my Ling Long Palace hall has no one?" As she spoke, she pushed Wu Fu'er towards the maidservant behind her. Following that, his eyes revealed a vicious glint as he laughed sinisterly towards Yiqing Luo. "This hall master would like to see what capabilities you have without the Overlord by your side." As soon as he finished speaking, she suddenly attacked. His figure was as fast as lightning. Yiqing Luo could only see a shadow flitting past her eyes. Hall Master Wu Yan was nowhere to be seen. She narrowed her eyes and quickly released her perception. He carefully sensed the flow of energy in the air. The moment he released his perception, the corners of her mouth lifted. His footwork moved. In an instant, his figure turned into nothingness. Bang! A loud sound rang out. The place where Yiqing Luo was standing earlier had an obvious dent. Gravel flew everywhere, and the surrounding trees also rustled under the strong wind. Hall Master Wu Yan's face was filled with pride. Just as he was about to clap his hands and retract his profound energy, under the billowing smoke and dust, there was no one floating in the area where she attacked. There were no screams as expected. She didn't frown. Instead, she fixed her gaze on him. Suddenly, his ears twitched, and the expression on his face instantly became sinister and ruthless. "Damn it!" Hall Master Wu Yan scolded in a low voice. She quickly followed the aura and turned back. But it was already too late. That fiery red figure was extremely fast. With just a few instantaneous steps, not only did he avoid his attack but he also managed to dodge it. He quickly closed in on Wu Fu'er, who was being taken care of by the maidservants in the crowd. Wu Fu'er was dumbfounded. Yiqing Luo's speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, she only felt a strong gust of wind coming towards her. There was no reaction. His body suddenly felt light. His neck was grabbed by an ice-cold hand. Wu Fu'er's eyes widened in disbelief. In Wu Fu'er's heart, his grandmother was the most powerful person in the world. If it wasn't for the fact that Grandma remembered her friendship with the palace master, she wouldn't have been able to find him. The palace lord of the Ling Long Palace, even grandmother can take on such a great responsibility. She thought that once Grandma made a move, Yiqing Luo would have no chance to retaliate at all. Then she would kneel and beg for mercy, begging him to spare her life. His heart was filled with beautiful fantasies. But the reality was that she had become his captive. When on earth did Yiqing Luo get past her grandmother's attack and came to her side? She wasn't the only one who didn't notice. Even Grandma didn't notice this. Wu Fu'er could not understand. The strength of the grip on her neck made her face flush red. She found it hard to breathe and the whites of her eyes rolled up. The aura of impending death made her want to cry for help and struggle. However, he couldn't use any strength at all. Yiqing Luo. Not only Wu Fu'er was shocked, Hall Master Wu Yan was also shocked. The raging anger in her heart almost swallowed her rationality. Let go of Fu'er. Chapter 4107. I won't touch you. Hall Head Wu Yan's eyes were fixed on Wu Fu'er, looking at her pained expression as though she was about to suffocate. She was worried and anxious. Her hands clenched into fists, suppressing her anger. Yiqing Luo, let go of Fu Er, today's matter. Let it go. Let it go? Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly as she glanced sideways at Wu Fu Er, whose face was flushed red. Yanwu City's mysterious maiden barged into my guest room without any explanation, treating me so rudely, and even tried to make a move. My young heart has suffered a serious injury. Her other hand pressed against her chest, as her face revealed a pained expression. It was so exaggerated that it was obvious that she was pretending. What do you want to do? Hall head Wu Yen looked at Wu Fu Er carefully as he asked while restraining his temper. As Yanwu City's mysterious maiden's elder, not only did you not discipline her for her wrongdoings, you even made a move on me without any explanation, hurting my already injured heart once again. Yiqing Luo blinked her innocent eyes, as though she had suffered a huge grievance. Her drama queen look made Hall head Wu Yan's face twitched a few times. The gaze he used to look at Yiqing Luo was filled with hostility. Yiqing Luo, who had a hostage in her hands, had nothing to fear. If you have the ability, come and hurt each other? In this Ling Long Palace's territory. If she really made a move against Hall head Wu Yen, then she would be really stupid. Rather than making a move against Hall head Wu Yen, why not find a chance to reason with Hall head Wu Yen? Of course, the other party wouldn't listen to reason or whatever. So, this was the only way to make Hall head Wu Yen calm down and listen to her reason. Hall head Wu Yen. Calm down my ass. She was about to explode, all right. Hall head Wu Yan's eyes turned red from anger. Her voice was squeezed out word by word through gritted teeth. What exactly do you want? What I want is very simple. Both of you apologize to me and this matter will be over. Yiqing Luo put on a, I'm so kind, so cute, so considerate, expression. You dream on. Wu Fu Er, whose throat was being strangled, tried to pry open Yiqing Luo's hands and refused to apologize. She didn't believe that Yiqing Luo really dared to kill her in front of her grandmother. This was the Linglong Palace. If Yiqing Luo really dared to make a move, Yiqing Luo would definitely die here. Oh, looks like Yan Free City's mysterious maiden has a backbone. I'll have to fulfill your backbone. Yiqing Luo's smile deepened as her fingers touched Wu Fu Er's face. If you have the ability, kill me. Do you think I'm really afraid of you? Wu Fu Er spat out the words with great difficulty, her tone extremely stubborn. Yiqing Luo's eyes widened as she innocently raised her head towards Hall Chief Wu Yen. Hall Chief Wu Yen, you heard it with your own ears. This is her request, I'm only fulfilling her wish. When he said the last, oh, he purposely raised his voice. She seemed to be acting cute and spoiled. Her eyes were full of smiles. The expression on his face was also a pure and innocent smile. However, at the moment when he finished speaking, a voice suddenly rang out. Her slender jade-like fingers suddenly clenched tightly. That strength was so deep that Wu Fuer's eyes rolled back and she almost fainted. However, the feeling of pressure on her neck caused her to regain her consciousness in an instant. That kind of instantaneous contact with death. It made Wu Fuer's inner heart surge with immense fear. Chapter 4108. The aura of death finally made Wu Fuer feel fear. She tried her best to roll her eyes as her fingers dug into Yiqing Luo's hand. Yiqing Luo. Hall head Wu Yen clenched her teeth as her eyes blazed with fire. Her profound energy was tensed up as though it would explode at any moment. You dare to hurt Fu, or I will make you regret that you were born into this world. Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she gave a casual smile. It's not a loss for me to be buried with Yan City's mysterious maiden. Hall head Wu Yen was so angry that she almost crushed her teeth. She regretted underestimating Yiqing Luo's sinister level. Regretted not being able to protect her own granddaughter. Which gave Yiqing Luo a chance. When had Fu ever suffered such pain? Looking at Wu Fuer's twisted expression, Hall head Wu Yan's heart broke. She was filled with rage but she didn't dare to act rashly. In Hall head Wu Yan's heart, she agreed with Yiqing Luo's words. Her Fu the most beautiful lady in the world, had an unlimited bright future. How could she be buried with Yiqing Luo? What I want is merely an apology. Is my request too much? Yiqing Luo tilted her head innocently. Following that, she put on a saintly white lotus expression, expressing her puzzlement. You're obviously in the wrong. I'm asking you to apologize, not asking for your life. Look. The more she pretended to be innocent, the more you're being unreasonable, expression. This made Hall Head Wu Yen so angry that she almost threw up blood. She suppressed her anger and gritted her teeth. "All right, I'll apologize to you, let go of Fu, After saying this sentence, Hall Head Wu Yen practically used all the strength in his body to restrain his raging emotions. Between his teeth, he spat out a few words. "You can not." Yiqing Luo clicked her tongue. "So insincere? As though I'm forcing you to apologize. Hall Head Wu Yen doesn't recognize your own mistake? Don't push your luck." Hall Head Wu Yen was furious. Yiqing Luo touched Wu Fuer's face. "Hall Head Wu Yen doesn't seem to dote on this granddaughter of yours." Hall Head Wu Yen was so angry that she was trembling. That was an anger that she tried her best to suppress. The surging profound energy, wave after wave, rippled out in the air. The air whistled like a hurricane. A tyrannical pressure covered the entire space. The surrounding disciples of Ling Long Palace were so frightened that they did not dare to make a sound. This was the first time he had met someone like Yiqing Luo who didn't play her cards according to common sense and whose skin was so thick that it was indestructible. "How do you want me to apologize?" Hall Chief Wu Yan's eyes were sharp as he asked word by word. Yiqing Luo replied, "Do you need me to teach you how to apologize? How insincere." Hall Head Wu Yan shut his eyes tightly, suppressing his anger as he slowly walked towards Yiqing Luo. Immediately after, he faced Yiqing Luo and slowly bowed down. "I, Hall Master Wu Yan, represent Fuer too." Hall Leader Wu Yan's waist was just about to bend down. An invisible force stopped Hall Chief Wu Yan's movements. The young girl's clear and melodious laughter reached his ears. "Hall Master Wu Yan really dotes on the mystic fairy of the Wu Yan city. It's really enviable." Hall Leader Wu Yan had yet to react. He straightened his body under the invisible force. Right in front of him he saw Wu Fu being thrown into his arms. Hall Leader Wu Yan immediately stretched out his hand and carefully caught Wu Fu bringing her into his arms. "Fu Fu." Hall Leader Wu Yan anxiously called out Wu Fuer's name, his face filled with worry. Chapter 4109. Wu Fu took some time before she managed to catch her breath. Her little face had turned pale from fright. Both her hands holding Hall Head Wu Yan's hands were still trembling. That frightened and pitiful look. It made Hall Head Wu Yan's eyes turn red from heartache. She pulled Wu Fu into her arms and gently patted her back to comfort her. Her eyes were filled with a murderous glint as she stared at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo calmly welcomed this sharp gaze as the smile on her lips didn't diminish at all. She slowly walked towards them as her voice was gentle. "She's fine. After resting for a few days, she'll be able to jump around again." "Shut up!" Hall Head Wu Yan shouted angrily. Yiqing Luo spread her hands out as she put on an innocent look. "I'm just protecting myself." Following that, her lower lips curled upwards as her eyes rose, giving off an indescribable flirtatious look. Moreover speaking, Hall Head Wu Yan as an elder doesn't know how to teach the younger generation, so I shall help Hall Head Wu Yan to discipline this ignorant granddaughter of yours, in case she gets beaten to death outside. It was still all right if Yiqing Luo didn't say anything. This one sentence ignited the anger which Hall Head Wu Yan had been suppressing in her chest. She hugged Wu Fu tightly as her profound energy burst forth as it pressed towards Yiqing Luo in an overwhelming manner. "Who do you think you are? My granddaughter? Do you have the right to make irresponsible remarks?" The power under a raging fury. It was close to destroying the heavens and earth. It was just a moment's effort. Yiqing Luo felt that the air was surging with raging waves. She could even hear the sound of the air cracking continuously. The air waves kept on surging. One wave after another, spreading in all directions. The houses in all directions kept on shaking. The trees were rustling from the strong wind. There were even some trees which were uprooted and overturned. Yiqing Luo's face didn't show any signs of panic. Even in the face of the dark force that was rushing towards him, her expression didn't change at all. Her peripheral vision slightly glanced towards a certain direction. Immediately after, she concealed the flash of ridicule in her eyes. His footwork was quickly executed as the dark force pressed down on him. "TSK. I knew it. Hall Master Wu Yan is a person who doesn't keep his word. After releasing the hostage, Hall Master Wu Yan wants to kill me? Looks like I still need a hostage to ensure my safety in the Ling Long Palace." The young girl said casually, her tone full of ridicule. "As the saying goes, if the upper beam is not straight, the lower beam will be crooked. I'm afraid that Mystic Fairy of Wanyan City has learned her character of making trouble out of nothing from Hall Master Wanyan." Hall Master Wu Yan's eyes turned icy cold as his murderous aura manifested. as he struck a palm strike towards Yiqing Luo. Courting death. Thick and tyrannical profound energy tumbled unceasingly, as though a raging tsunami was approaching from all directions. Yiqing Luo had nowhere to hide. However, this time round Yiqing Luo had no intention to avoid it. His eyes were filled with laughter as if he was mocking something. The surging dark force was extremely fast. But in a blink of an eye, it had already reached Yiqing Luo's face. The surrounding air seemed to be torn apart by the sharp profound light. She instantly felt that it was hard to breathe as a stuffy feeling arose from the bottom of her heart. The surging tyrannical might continued to spread. Yiqing Luo's face turned slightly pale. But she didn't move a single step. Just as that raging tsunami was about to swallow Yiqing Luo. Suddenly Yiqing Luo's surroundings, at a speed which was visible to the naked eye, was enveloped by a layer of green halo. That halo enveloped Yiqing Luo within it. It was like a cyan crystal ball, and from time to time, it would flash with cyan electric light. Bam! Chapter 41:10. Instantly, under that collision, two bursts of energy exploded. After a series of earthquakes. Only then did he gradually stop breathing. Hall Head Wu Yan's expression changed when she saw the layer of green light which enveloped Yiqing Luo. She swiftly raised her head and looked in front. When she saw the indistinct figure in the profound wave, her expression turned steely green for a moment. But it was just a fleeting moment. Immediately after, her expression converged as she pursed her lips. Hall Master. From afar a few figures walked over. All of them were dressed in lotus green robes. But the clothes and patterns on them were totally different. Walking right in front, her footwork was steady and dignified. Her dignified hair and makeup made her youthful face look a little old. Yiqing Luo estimated that this Ling Long Palace Hall Master was not more than 30 years old. Under the dusky profound wave, that person's figure was indistinctly visible. It looked like it was very far away. But in a blink of an eye, she had already appeared in front of everyone. That person didn't look at Hall Head Wu Yan. Her gaze fell on Yiqing Luo immediately. Ling Long Palace Hall Master. Yiqing Luo greeted the Hall Master's gaze with a smile. Ling Long Palace Hall Master's gaze sunk as she stared at Yiqing Luo for a long time before nodding slightly. Miss Yi. Hall Master. Hall Head Wu Yan's face turned black after being neglected. She's the murderer who killed two mysterious maiden. Now that she's at Ling Long Palace, she's still acting wantonly, attempting to kill our third mysterious maiden. The hand which she used to point at Yiqing Luo was trembling slightly. Apparently she was extremely infuriated. Hall Master, a person like this must be taught a lesson. Hall Head Wu Yan's hysterical accusations made Ling Long Palace Hall Master's gaze shift onto her. When Hall Head Wu Yan saw that, she angrily complained, Hall Master, look at mysterious Yan maiden, she almost. Hall Head Wu Yan. Ling Long Palace Hall Master calmly spoke. That voice was obviously dignified and solemn. But it was melodious and extremely pleasant to the ears. Hall Chief Wu Yan felt a chill down his spine and lowered his head slightly. I have my own plans for this matter. Her voice was very calm. However, his next words were cold and dignified. However, Hall Master Wu Yan, the most basic principle of a person is integrity. As the Hall Master of the Linglong Hall, I hope that you will not do anything that will bring shame to the Linglong Hall. Hall Master Wu Yan's face immediately turned green and red. His slightly lowered eyelids hid the cold glint that flashed across his eyes. His lips moved. You are right, Temple Master. Hall Master. It was obviously her, she attacked me in the Linglong Palace and even tried to kill me? Grandma just felt sorry for me. When Wu Fu-er heard the Hall Master's words, she lifted her head from her grandmother's embrace. His face was pale and covered in cold sweat. He looked extremely haggard. Fu-er. Hall Head Wu Yan clasped Wu Fu-er's shoulder as he berated her in a low voice. He immediately raised his head and his face was filled with terror. Fu-er is not sensible, Hall Master, please don't be calculative. Linglong Palace Hall Master didn't even bother to take a look at Wu Fu-er. Her eyes were calm and indifferent. Miss Yi said something very right. As mysterious maiden Wu Yan's elder, you can dote on her but you must also discipline her. Hall Head Wu Yan felt a fire burning on her face. Chapter 41:11. Wu Fu saw that her grandmother was acting so submissive. His face was filled with indignation. He opened his mouth wanting to refute. Hall Master Wu Yan quickly pulled him back. The Linglong Palace Lord only glanced at Wu Fu Er indifferently before looking away. When the Linglong Palace Master's gaze landed on Yi Qingyu's expression changed. Hall Leader Wu Yan's body suddenly stiffened and he lowered his head with a pale face. Hall Leader, I will definitely discipline mysterious Yen Maiden strictly. She will definitely bring shame to Linglong Palace. While the two were talking, Yi Qingluo who was standing by the side took a panoramic view of this scene. Just now, when Hall Master Wu Yan apologized, Old Man Song told her that there were other auras nearby. Yi Qingluo didn't need to guess to know that it was absolutely the Linglong Palace Lord who had arrived. Because of that, that was why she had purposely let Wu Fuer go. He also forced Hall Master Wu Yan to attack out of humiliation. The reason she did not dodge when Hall Master Wu Yan's ferocious attack was because she knew that the Hall Master of the Linglong Hall would not watch as she was killed. After all, she still had the title of His Majesty's Woman. If he really died in the Linglong Palace Hall under such circumstances, he would not be able to escape. That would be like slapping Dizun in the face. Therefore, the Palace Master of the Linglong Palace would definitely not stand idly by. It would also make it more believable that Hall Master Wu Yan had tried to kill her. This was blatant proof. Furthermore, who knew how long the Linglong Palace Master had been watching from the dark? How much did he see? No matter what. It was a fact that Wu Fuer had taken the initiative to cause trouble and had even made the first move. The ones who were in the wrong were the two of them. Miss Yi, are you all right? The great judicial judge walked out from behind the Linglong Palace Lord and sized Yi Qingluo up. This could not be considered concern. It was just a question to prevent other troubles from getting him into trouble. Yi Qingluo's lips curled as she replied in an indifferent tone, "If Hall Master had come a little later, I might be in trouble. This matter is the fault of the Linglong Palace. The Linglong Palace will take responsibility for this." The Grand Judge cupped his hands towards Yi Qingluo. Linglong Palace will definitely give Miss Yi a satisfactory explanation. Yi Qingluo raised her eyebrows. His attitude seemed to be completely different from when he first arrived at the Linglong Hall. He actually gave her a satisfactory explanation? Jeske, this change is a bit too big. Yi Qingluo expressed that there was definitely a problem. It was because, had the Grand Judicial Officer verified what she had said to him in the carriage? This thought flashed past Yi Qingluo's mind. Soon he got his answer. Because when the Great Justice politely said those words, it was obvious that he was trying to curry favor with Kirin. Wu Fuer, who had just recovered, was so angry that she almost exploded. Her face was pale as her eyes stared deadly at Yi Qingluo as she cried out hysterically, "Grand Judicial Elder! She was the one who hurt me and even tried to kill me. How is it my fault?" Seeing that his granddaughter still dared to talk back to the Great Justice in front of the Hall Master Wu Yan immediately reached out to stop Wu Fuer. The Grand Judge's gaze swept over her hand, which was holding Wu Fuer's hand. He narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Hall Leader Wu Yan, there is no need to stop me. I would like to hear what grievances the mysterious Lady of Yama has." Hall Leader Wu Yan's hand trembled as he wanted to explain for Wu Fuer. A cold and dignified voice completely suppressed Hall Leader Wu Yan's words. "I would like to hear it too," the Linglong Palace Master said. Chapter 41:12. However, Wu Fuer did not feel her grandmother's anxiety. Instead, she felt that the words of the Hall Master and the Judicial Grand Elder were supporting her. She raised her head with confidence and said, "Hall Master, Grand Elder of the Judicial Grand Elder, when we three Empyrean fairies left the Linglong Hall and returned to the main city, this woman killed without embroiling cities Qiao Yulu and shadowless cities Mu Qiulan." She paused and said, "After the Grand Elder of the Judicial Grand Elder brought this woman back, she wanted to kill me, the third Empyrean fairy. If not for my grandmother's timely arrival, I would have been a corpse in her hands." Wu Fuer's eyes reddened as she said this. She pinched her sleeves and pressed the corners of her eyes, looking aggrieved. She actually dared to attack me in the territory of the Linglong Palace. She clearly doesn't respect the Linglong Palace and you Palace Master. She did not forget to direct the anger towards the Linglong Hall Master as she complained. After a while, Wu Fuer raised her eyes tentatively, sobbing as she quietly looked at the expression of the Linglong Palace Lord. But, she looked at him. She felt a chill run down her spine. The hand that was pressing the corners of her eyes froze. The reason for that was because the Linglong Palace's Hall Master did not reveal the furious expression that she had imagined. More accurately, the Linglong Hall Master did not even show any expression. Her eyes looked as if they had been soaked in ice, without any ripples. What? Lord. Wu Fu-er was so shocked that she took a step back, her voice trembling. The judicial grand elder of the judicial grand elders sneered at her and said word by word, "Where did Yen Shen and Vi hear the rumor that Miss Yi killed the Empyrean fairy?" Wu Fu-er's face turned pale in an instant. She wriggled her lips and trembled a little. The hall master and I have been nearby for a long time," the judicial grand elder of the judicial grand elder added. "Yes, from the moment you brought people to break into the guest room." Wu Fuer's eyes widened. Even hall master Wu Yan's expression changed. Plop. The grandfather and grandson pair knelt in front of the Ling Long Palace Lord, and they were trembling in fear. The judicial grand elder of the judicial grand elder and the hall master saw everything clearly. They had no way to refute. The two of them kept begging for mercy. The judicial grand elder's words shocked Yiqing Luo slightly. Her long and narrow eyes narrowed slightly. Before Wu Fu-er barged in, she was already nearby. How long ago was that? Does that mean he also knows that the palace master of the Palace of Darkness is in her room? She actually did not notice it at all. Perhaps just now, old man Song suddenly sensed an unfamiliar aura nearby. The palace master of the Linglong Palace had intentionally wanted her to sense it, if that was the case. This Linglong Palace master was really a bit scary. Hall Chief Wu Yan, you should know what to do. Linglong Palace Hall Master's faint voice rang, interrupting Yiqing Luo's deep thoughts. Hall Master Wu Yan shrunk back a little. His hands that were kneeling on the ground slightly curled up, and he finally said word by word, "Yes, I understand." Hall Wu Yan walked past Wu Yan and Wu Fu-er without making a sound. But Hall Leader Wu Yan felt a huge pressure pressing down on her internal organs, causing her face to instantly turn pale as she felt a dull pain. But she didn't dare to make a sound. Chapter 41:13. Hall Master Wu Yan knelt down with his forehead on the ground, not daring to make a sound. "Miss Yi." Linglong Palace Lord stopped in front of Yiqing Luo. The distance between the two was just a step away. The overbearing pressure made Yiqing Luo's brows creased slightly. She pursed her lips and met Linglong Palace Lord's gaze without any intention to retreat. "What's the matter, Linglong Palace Lord?" Although this matter started because of mysterious Lady Yen, but Miss Ye's actions I don't approve, Linglong Palace Lord said calmly. Yiqing Luo nodded calmly. "I don't deny this point." Following that, she smiled faintly and her brows were calm. "After all, I'm a guest invited by the great judicial magistrate. As a guest, it's indeed inappropriate to make a move in the master's house." Saying that, she cupped her hands together and bowed respectfully towards Linglong Palace Lord. "Will Linglong Palace Lord please forgive me?" Faced with the oppressive might of the Linglong Palace's hall master and the invisible pressure pressing down on him, Linglong's expression changed. Yiqing Luo didn't have any stage fright. Instead she faced it calmly. This made Linglong Palace Lord's eyes filled with some probing. Especially Yiqing Luo's calm look and actions without any ill feelings, really made one had no choice but to look up to her. At such a young age she knew when to yield and when to stand tall. She knew how to use extreme measures to protect herself in times of danger. He also knew how to admit his mistakes and apologize in a well-behaved manner. She couldn't pick out any mistakes at all. This made it hard for her to continue pursuing this matter. The eyes of the Linglong Palace Master deepened and the corners of his mouth curled up into a very shallow smile. "Miss Ye's magnanimity makes this Palace Master admire you. This Palace Master will accept your apology." "Thank you, Linglong Palace Lord." Yiqing Luo smiled as her eyes curved. This scene made Wu Fu-er, who was kneeling on the ground, eyes blazing. She almost couldn't control herself and wanted to stand up to disrupt this peaceful scene. She was Linglong Palace's mysterious lady. She was the real victim. She was almost killed by Yiqing Luo. As the Linglong Palace Lord, not only did she not help her seek revenge, he even punished her and was so kind to the enemies of the Linglong Palace. When had the Palace Lord of the Linglong Palace given them the slightest bit of face? Never. What was this? The more Wu Fuer thought about it, the more indignant she felt. Before she could do anything, Hall Master Wu Yan, who knew her well, pressed her down. Hall Master Wu Yan glared at his granddaughter as a warning. At this critical juncture, if Wu Fuer continued to cause trouble, she was afraid that she would not be able to protect Wu Fuer, even though he was holding Wu Fuer down. Hall Chief Wu Yan's anger was no less than Wu Fuer's. She did her best for the Linglong Palace and exhausted all her efforts for the development of the Linglong Palace. but in the end he was inferior to an outsider. Moreover, it was a murderer who had killed the mysterious fairy that the Linglong Palace had painstakingly cultivated. Just now, the meaning of the Linglong Palace Master's words was already very clear. The Palace Master hoped that she would personally teach her granddaughter a lesson. Wu Fuer's position as the Empyrean Fairy was about to be shaken. Not only that, his position as the Hall Master of the main hall would also be shaken. The guest room that Yiqing Luo was staying in was completely destroyed because of Wu Fu. The Linglong Palace Master immediately changed a room for Yiqing Luo. That room was adjacent to the judicial court. Basically, if there was any big commotion, the judicial court would be alerted at the first instance. The arrangement by the Linglong Palace Master was to prevent something like Wu Fu from happening again. Chapter 41:14. Yiqing Luo knew what was going on. In fact, they were spying on her. In any case, this Linglong Palace Hall was someone else's territory. No matter where he lived, he would be under the watchful eyes of others. She didn't have much to say about it. Moreover, after moving into this room, obviously there were no more people looking for trouble. Previously it was like the Calabash brothers saving their grandpa. Now it was too quiet. Ever since he helped Yiqing Luo to change her room, the Linglong Palace Lord did not appear again. Instead, the Grand Judicial Judge would come and hang around from time to time. After holing up in the Linglong Palace for a day, Yiqing Luo couldn't stay any longer. That day, after the Linglong Palace Master and the Grand Judicial Judge had sent her back to her new room, they had looked at her meaningfully for a long time with complicated gazes. He turned around and left. He did not mention anything about the death of the Empyrean Fairy. It seemed that on the way to the Linglong Palace, the Grand Judicial Magistrate had purposely gone to find out what she had said to him. He had also gained a clear understanding of what had happened during the auction. Many people could prove that Xiao Yulu's death had nothing to do with her. Moreover, it was her, Yiqing Luo, and her group of brothers who had saved the various powerhouses in the Earth domain. This was why the judicial system's attitude towards Yiqing Luo had such an obvious change. This was also the reason why Linglong Palace Lord didn't investigate the reason why Yiqing Luo made a move on mysterious maiden in Linglong Palace. However, these are the reasons. Wu Fuer and Hall Leader Wu Yan would never be able to understand. However, even if she knew that she was not the one who killed Xiao Yulu, the Linglong Palace Lord and the Grand Judge still had no intention of talking to her. Yiqing Luo? So why did he bring her to the Linglong Hall? His attitude was one of indifference. Wasn't he simply stalling for time? Within a day in the Linglong Palace, the only thing Yiqing Luo could confirm was the Linglong Palace was indeed related to the Gloomy Palace. However, it was not deep. At the very least, the body of the Linglong Palace Master did not have the sinister aura of the Dark Nether Palace. In fact, there wasn't even the slightest hint of his aura when he came into contact with it. This made Yiqing Luo curious. Yesterday, how did the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace sneak into her room without being noticed by anyone in the Linglong Palace? Yiqing Luo couldn't understand and felt bored. Yesterday it was one wave after another. She was annoyed. He was so bored that he didn't even have someone to talk to. She wanted to take the initiative to cause trouble. Yiqing Luo sighed softly as she lowered her head and lifted her finger. Her gaze fell onto her fingertip, on that ring which resembled a fire phoenix. She caressed it gently. The news had already been out for a day. Hadn't Diamo Xian followed the scent of the profound phoenix ring and rushed over to the Linglong Palace? Just as he was thinking, a few light footsteps could be heard outside the door. One of them whispered, "Don't make any noise." The person inside was someone who even dared to make a move on the mysterious Lady of Yen. "If we make too much noise, we'll be easily discovered." "So, don't talk." Another person snapped. There were about 3 or 4 of them. Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows. What situation was this? She was just thinking of stirring things up. Trouble came knocking on my door? But, even if he were to do so, he would have to find someone with a higher degree of difficulty. These few were obviously inexperienced little disciples. Running here, other than sending their heads, what else could they do? Chapter 41:15. Women make things difficult for other women because of these few points. A female disciple pretended to be experienced. What? It's either jealousy or jealousy or jealousy. The female disciple replied. Tiske. No matter what, it's all jealousy. This jealousy thing is different. The female disciple was unfathomable. Everyone knows that our Linglong Palace's mysterious maiden is a rare beauty under the heavens. Her looks are superb and her status is something that everyone looks up to. Do you think that woman named Yiqing Luo wouldn't be jealous? That's true. The other female disciples nodded in agreement. The female disciple snorted coldly, so, because of jealousy, her heart is already twisted. All of you lower your voices, don't let her hear you. The person who berated them earlier reprimanded again. We're here on behalf of Yan Xiannu to see if she's secretly plotting to kill Yan Xiannu. If she finds out, all of us will be in trouble. The few female disciples sighed and didn't say another word. Yiqing Luo leaned against the headboard, listening to what the female disciples said outside the door. After hearing that, she couldn't help but raised her brows. These female disciples were duped by Wu Fu Air to see what she was doing? What was he up to this time? She was just punished by the Ling Long Palace Lord yesterday. Now she had the energy to stir up trouble again? When the few female disciples quietly pushed open Yiqing Luo's room window, revealing a small gap, and were about to cast their vision into the room, the female disciples looked into a pair of charming eyes that were smiling faintly. Just a glance. They felt their hearts tightening. Not from shock, but their souls were captivated by this gorgeous face in front of them. She even forgot to breathe because of this. That pair of long and narrow eyes were sparkling like the stars, dazzling and dazzling. That pink lips curled into a smile. Even though they were females, they felt their faces and ears turning red, as though they were being teased. You. Someone regained his senses as he ignorantly pointed at Yiqing Luo, as he swallowed a mouthful of saliva. Yiqing Luo smiled sweetly as she waved her hand at them. I'm the one whom you mentioned. Jealous of your mysterious maiden of hell, Yiqing Luo, what a coincidence. You are. The women's faces turned pale with fright when they heard this. One by one they were so scared that they fell out of the window and sat on the ground. Yiqing Luo leaned over and leaned against the window. He stuck his head out to look at the ground. There were 4 female disciples in total. Each of them looked to be about 13 or 14 years old. He was also very handsome. Yiqing Luo's lips curled. Aren't you here to see me? Why are you so surprised to see me? The 4 female disciples stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. He was both shocked and astonished. Especially when she said that Yiqing Luo was jealous of Wu Fu Air's female disciple. Her face seemed to be on fire. His pair of eyes, almost as though he was dead set on Yiqing Luo's face. The young lady in front of him had a gorgeous face, peerless elegance. Her fiery red robe set off that gorgeous face, which was very enchanting. Every smile and frown was a suffocating charm. It could be said. This young lady was the most beautiful lady they had ever seen since they were born. What did they say about jealousy, envy? Chapter 41:16. Wu Fu Air's looks were totally incomparable to Yiqing Luo's. How could Yiqing Luo possibly be jealous of Wu Fu Air or the other 2 mysterious maidens who were already dead? What a slap to the face. The female disciples' breathing became erratic. Their faces turned red. He crawled up from the ground in a panic. Wee. The few female disciples patted off the dust on their bodies as they were embarrassed and irritated, not daring to take a look at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo leaned against the window and tilted her head as her smile deepened. These female disciples were really innocent and adorable. He didn't expect that there would be such a naive young lady in the Ling Long Palace. These were probably children who had yet to undergo training and had just entered the Ling Long Palace. These women were merely being used by Wu Fu. Yiqing Luo had no intention to haggle with them. Just as he was about to say something to tease them, he told them to leave. But the words were on the tip of his tongue. Before he could say a word, these few female disciples suddenly had a change in expression as all of them held onto their own chests. Their eyes widened as they stared deadly at Yiqing Luo. All 4 of them had the same expression on their faces, and all of them were in pain. Yiqing Luo immediately swallowed back the words that were in her mouth. What happened? She flipped over and jumped out from the window. She quickly moved to the front of the female disciples and checked their pulse. The 4 female disciples widened their eyes in agony as they shook their heads desperately at her. But he couldn't say a word. In just a moment, their faces were covered with a layer of greenish black. Poison. You guys are poisoned. The moment she felt their pulse, Yiqing Luo could tell that something was amiss. The female disciples were like fish on the shore, one hand pressing on their chest, the other desperately waving as if they were grasping at a life-saving straw. The fear of death filled their eyes. Without waiting for Yiqing Luo to take out the antidote from the profound phoenix ring, the faces of the 4 female disciples were already covered with a layer of black. Then he stopped breathing and fell to the ground. At the same time, an urgent and sharp voice rang out, "Judicial elders, this subordinate is absolutely not talking nonsense. I saw all of this with my own eyes, and if I don't rush over in time, I'm afraid." Following that, a middle-aged woman led 3 women dressed in elder robes over. When he saw Yiqing Luo half squatting on the ground and 4 female disciples lying on the ground, that middle-aged woman practically sprinted over as she stretched out her hand to tug Yiqing Luo. "You're great. Witness and material evidence are all here. Let's see how you're going to quibble." Only her hand had yet to touch Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo dodged sideways. She took a few steps back from the middle-aged woman, and a cold glint flashed across her eyes. If she still couldn't figure out that this was a trap, she would be an idiot. It was obvious that this was a trap set up by Wu Fu heir, or more accurately Hall leader Wu Yan. He had purposely used these 4 female disciples to deal with her. Otherwise, how could there be such a coincidence? Coincidentally, these 4 female disciples died in front of her. Someone rushed over with the judicial elders, and they happened to see it clearly. In order to deal with her, that pair of grandfather and grandson had really put in a lot of effort. He could even sacrifice his own disciple. These 4 female disciples who had just entered Ling Long Palace were just a few small cannon fodder. What's going on? Chapter 41:17. The Grand Judge had just left Yiqing Luo's room 2 hours ago. At that time, Yiqing Luo didn't show any signs of abnormality. What else could it be? I've long heard from Hall Master Wu Yan that this Miss Yi is arrogant, but I had not expected her to be so arrogant. A lady behind the Grand Judge sneered. Yesterday she injured Yen Xian and Vi, and today she killed 4 new disciples of Ling Long Palace. Second Judge, aren't your words a little too arbitrary? The Grand Judge frowned as she took a look at the lady who choked. What exactly happened, we will only know after we investigate. Grand Judge, Missy was brought back to Ling Long Palace by you, and the person who made Ling Long Palace into such a foul atmosphere is also you. Her lips twitched coldly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. Now, you still want to argue for her? Grand Judge, are you muddle-headed? The Grand Judge's face sunk a few degrees. Even Yiqing Luo, who was a bystander, could tell that the undercurrent between the 2 courts was surging. At this moment, the third lady immediately stood up and eased the atmosphere. Grand Judge, Second Judge. Although we saw 4 female disciples died in front of Miss Yi, but after all, we have not seen it with our own eyes. How did Miss Yi kill the 4 female disciples? It's still too early to say anything now. She pulled the Grand Judge and the Second Judge. Let's wait for Hall Master to return and report this matter to him before we make a decision. Although this lady said that she was trying to be a peacemaker. However, from her tone and words, one could tell that she had a different opinion. She was certain that they were killed by Yiqing Luo. Right now, they were just lacking the most crucial evidence. The Grand Judge shook off that person's hand. Third Judge, don't think that I don't know what you and Second Judge are trying to do. What can we do? The third judicial judge pushed the first judicial judge's arm and smiled warmly. 4 female disciples have indeed died here, and Miss Yi was indeed beside them. In addition, Protector Fan saw it with his own eyes. All of this can't be faked. It's understandable that the second judicial judge would suspect Miss Yi. The Grand Judge's face darkened as his gaze shot towards Yiqing Luo. What do you have to explain? What else is there to explain? Protector Fan saw with his own eyes that she bullied the new disciple of the Ling Long Palace Hall and specially went to the judicial court to invite us over. What's there to explain? The second judicial court's eyes were cold and fierce as he shouted angrily. Immediately following that, he shot his vision towards that middle-aged woman who went to capture Yiqing Luo earlier. The middle-aged woman, Protector Fan, immediately nodded and replied, "Yes, that's right. When I saw Miss Yi bullying the new disciple, I hurriedly rushed to the judicial court. In less than half an incense's time, Miss Yi killed him." The second elder sneered. "This elder will definitely seek justice for the disciples in the hall." She raised her hand and said sternly, "Men, take the female disciple's body away and examine it carefully. Find out the cause of death." Soon, other female disciples walked over in an orderly manner. Who dares move? The first judicial officer was obviously infuriated by the second judicial officer's attitude. His face darkened as he said, "No one is allowed to touch these 4 corpses before the hall master returns. The female disciples have just died. Do you want them to be unable to rest in peace even after they die?" Second preceptor asked. Chapter 41:18. Tamper? What kind of people do you think we are? The second judicial elder's face sank as he bent down to grab those dead female disciples. Seeing the second judicial elder making a move, the first judicial elder naturally would not stand idly by. Their arms collided. Immediately, the profound energy surged wildly in all directions. Gusts of hurricanes were emitted from their intertwined hands. Very quickly, the two of them were in a mess. The other disciples immediately dodged. The third judicial elder stood on the spot with a smile, staring at the two of them without any intention to stop them. It was obvious that they had long been used to such a situation. It seemed that the first judicial elder and second judicial elder were notorious for not getting along. It was common for them to fight. Yiqing Luo's line of sight slowly shifted from the two of them to the three judicial officers. Her charming eyes narrowed slightly. Her pink lips were slightly pursed. A trace of light flashed past her eyes. She didn't know why, but compared to those two, Yiqing Luo had a strange feeling towards this third elder who seemed to be trying to smooth things over. Perhaps Yiqing Luo's gaze was too obvious. The third judicial elder who had been smiling at the two of them suddenly turned his head and followed Yiqing Luo's gaze. Their line of sight collided. Yiqing Luo also didn't feel embarrassed after being discovered by others. Instead, she calmly raised her eyebrows and said with a faint smile, "Third judicial elder doesn't intend to stop them?" The third judicial elder was all smiles. At this age, coupled with the amiability between his brows, he looked like an amiable grandmother. But, the more such emotions. The moon made the strange feeling in Yiqing Luo's heart intensified. The third judicial elder shook his head. The two of them have been fighting for a lifetime, they are used to it. When they are tired they will naturally stop. Yiqing Luo hooked her lips and didn't respond. It was the third judicial elder who opened up the topic, walked towards Yiqing Luo and asked with a smile, "The first judicial elder treats you really well. Yesterday for you they did not hesitate to invite the hall master to change your room, and today for you, they fought with the second judicial elder." She sounded like she was just having a casual chat. But the meaning of probing in her words was still very obvious. It seemed that the third judicial elder felt that she and the first judicial elder might have reached an unspeakable deal. This was also a test. What was the relationship between her and the judge? Yiqing Luo pretended not to understand the deeper meaning in her words, tilted her head, and her slender fingers curled up a strand of hair hanging on her shoulder. "Third judicial magistrate's words are wrong." "What do you mean?" "After all, I was personally brought back by the Grand Inquisitor. I can barely be considered a guest. But the mysterious Lady of Yen came to find trouble with me without any explanation and even tried to kill me. Hallmaster Wu Yen, for the sake of his own granddaughter, the two of them tried to take my life. Isn't this a slap in the face to the great justice system?" Yiqing Luo propped her chin as she replied with a beaming smile, "As for now. You've said it yourself, the both of them have been fighting for their entire lives and now they're merely making use of this matter to make a fuss." Yiqing Luo's words made the three judges speechless. Yiqing Luo took another look at the two who were entangled in battle and said, "Do you believe that if the second judicial judge were to stand on my side today, the person who insisted that I killed the 4 female disciples would be the first judicial judge?" Chapter 41:19. Yiqing Luo smiled as she lowered her eyes to look at the 4 heavily poisoned female disciples whose faces were pitch black. What a pity that these innocent and naive children have become the first batch of sacrifices. Children. Hearing Yiqing Luo's words, the 3 judges felt a little strange. Isn't Missy only 15 or 16 years old? Bam, rumble, just as the both of them were talking. The surroundings suddenly exploded with a deafening sound. The two's energy collided heavily. Between heaven and earth, sand and pebbles flew as the profound wave surged. The air seemed to have split open into numerous cracks. Wave after wave reverberating in all directions. Yiqing Luo and the 3 judges leapt up at the same time, swiftly avoiding the affected areas. The violent energy was like a tide, cracking the ground. The house shook as sand and pebbles flew up. After the two of them collided, they quickly rushed together again. Bam! There was another explosion. But it wasn't just the both of them who collided. But a breathtaking and violent energy suddenly rushed into the profound wave which the both of them were entangled in. That valiant and overbearing energy. Almost in an instant, it broke through the surging energy between the both of them. It also easily blocked the two's burning battle intent. Yiqing Luo, who was hiding in the safe zone, raised her head up, looking towards the direction of the third energy attack. He saw that graceful and noble woman slowly walk out from the air ripples that filled the sky. She was standing in the middle of the great judicial and second judicial. A pair of calm and emotionless eyes stared at the two of them quietly. Even if she didn't speak, they could clearly feel that kind of awe-inspiring, imposing manner from her. The two of them who were entangled in battle were interrupted by someone. But they didn't dare to reveal any anger on their faces. Instead, they swiftly stood up straight and respectfully bowed towards the lady who suddenly appeared. Palace Lord. Have you two had enough? Linglong Palace Lord spoke indifferently, with a trace of coldness in her tone. The both of them trembled as they suddenly knelt on the ground. Palace Lord, please forgive us. The Linglong Palace Master's pitch-black eyes were as calm as still water. As a judicial elder, have you forgotten the rules of the Linglong Palace? We wouldn't dare. Both of them pressed their foreheads to the ground. Don't dare? The Linglong Palace Lord looked at them coldly and said, This Palace Lord really can't see why you don't dare to do it. The two of them shivered and didn't dare to speak again. What? Lord Hall Master, Guard Fan, who had been hiding in the corner, suddenly rushed out. He knelt on the ground and kowtowed to the Linglong Palace Master. Palace Master, the matter is not what you see. When Protector Fan rushed out, Yi Qing Luo's slender brows rose. This Protector Fan had led 3 members of the judiciary to appear when the 4 female disciples had just breathed their last. Then he claimed that he had seen her humiliating the 4 female disciples with his own eyes. Clearly this Guard Fan was on Hall Master Wu Yan's side. But, just now, if she wasn't mistaken, the reason why Protector Fan had rushed out at this time was because of the Emperor. It seemed like the 3 judges secretly gave her a look. This third judge indeed wasn't as amiable as she looked on the surface. Speak. The icy cold words were filled with majesty. The Linglong Palace Lord's chilly eyes looked towards Guard Fan. Just one look. Guard Fan was so scared that she started trembling. Chapter 41:20. With a face full of tears and snot, Guard Fan recounted what had happened just now. She emphasized that it was Yi Qing Luo who had bullied the female disciples and poisoned them when she brought the 3 judicial elders over. She also emphasized that the first judicial elder couldn't differentiate right from wrong and had to defend Yi Qing Luo, and stop the second judicial elder from touching the female disciples' corpses, which led to the war. In the end this battle was the reason for the first judicial elder. The second judicial elder was just defending herself. After these words were said, the first judicial elder's face turned as black as charcoal. But she didn't refute immediately as she continued to kneel on the ground respectfully. Her hands, which were placed on the ground, were clenched into fists tightly. Linglong Palace Lord's expression didn't change much when she heard what she said. Only that her gaze fell onto Yi Qing Luo for a moment. Very quickly it shifted away. Protector Fan didn't get any response from the Palace Lord and shrunk her head guiltily and fearfully. I'm telling the truth. Did I say that I don't believe you? Linglong Palace Lord sneered. Protector Fan shivered. Linglong Palace Lord walked past the 3 people kneeling on the ground and walked directly towards the 4 female disciples' corpses. Because of the battle between the 2 judicial elders, the 4 female disciples were covered with a layer of gravel and dust. Their pitch-black faces, which were obviously heavily poisoned, were particularly eye-catching. Linglong Palace Lord's gaze swept past those few people. She looked at Yi Qing Luo. What do you want me to explain? Yi Qing Luo shrugged. You Linglong Palace ganged up to bully an outsider like me. Is there any use for me to explain? Say it, I will make the decision. Linglong Palace Lord replied. The minute she said this, Protector Fan became anxious. Palace Lord, I'm telling the truth, absolutely not a single word of lies. You must not listen to that woman's nonsense. Linglong Palace Lord glanced at her, although she didn't say a word, but her eyes flashed past a faintly discernible ridicule. Yi Qing Luo laughed. Protector Fan, I didn't say anything. How did it become a bunch of nonsense? I feel that Protector Fan has a guilty conscience? Protector Fan instantly raised her head. You're sinister and cunning. He would definitely quibble. Even the first judicial department has been bewitched by you and is fighting against the second judicial department. I just don't want Lord Hall Master to be deceived by you. Is that so? Yi Qing Luo looked at Guardian Fan smilingly. So, in Guardian Fan's eyes, the Grand Judicial Court and Linglong Palace Lord are so easily bewitched. Guard Fan was so scared that his face turned pale. He kowtowed to the Linglong Palace Master. This subordinate absolutely did not mean that. Enough. Ling Long Palace Lord's expression sunk slightly as she shouted to stop Guardian Fan and looked towards Yiqing Luo. If there's nothing else to explain, this Palace Lord will take it as your tacit agreement. Yiqing Luo laughed as her eyes were filled with ridicule. As for me, there's really nothing much to explain after all. Just a little check on this corpse and the truth will eventually be revealed. Ling Long Palace Lord squinted at Yiqing Luo as she raised her voice. Men, bring the corpse down. No need. Yiqing Luo raised her hand, stopping Ling Long Palace Lord's words. Immediately following that, she leapt up and landed lightly beside Ling Long Palace Lord. Following that, she bent down and lifted up a corpse on the ground. Chapter 41-21. Yiqing Luo rolled her eyes with a "you're an idiot" expression as she looked at Guardian Fan. I destroyed the corpse in front of all of you? Are you an idiot? Guardian Fan's face turned pale and red from being choked, as though he was infuriated but didn't dare to flare up. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about anyone else. He lifted up the female disciple's corpse and dragged her face, revealing that black face before the eyes of the Ling Long Palace's palace master. Ling Long Palace Lord, do you think that this poison looks like it was just administered? Yiqing Luo asked with a smile. The female disciples' faces were all purplish-black from being poisoned. It was extremely terrifying. Ling Long Palace Lord took a look at the female disciple's corpse. Doesn't look like it. Yiqing Luo placed that female disciple back onto the ground and took out a handkerchief to wipe her hands while saying, according to what Guardian Fan said half an incense ago, she had seen me humiliating these female disciples, and half an incense later, the female disciples were poisoned. Then may I ask, how did I manage to let these female disciples' poison penetrate deep into their bone marrow in just half an incense's time? When Yiqing Luo asked this question, her pair of long and narrow eyes curved into crescents. But the words that came out of her mouth were sonorous and powerful, like a huge rock, falling heavily on Guardian Fan's heart. Guardian Fan was so frightened that he shivered all over. His eyelashes trembled, not daring to look at Yiqing Luo. His heart was beating restlessly. This young lady obviously looked like she was only 15 or 16 years old. But she had such a strong, imposing manner. Just one gaze and she pressured him till he couldn't breathe properly. Seeing that Guardian Fan had already lost her head out of fear, and was about to give herself away, Yiqing Luo's brows curved even more as her voice was suppressed to an extremely low level, so deep that it made one's heart tighten. Regarding this, I have another question. Why? You obviously saw me humiliating your Ling Long Palace Lord's female disciples, but as a guardian, why did you stand by and watch? Obviously you could have stood out to stop it. Why did you take the unnecessary action of running over to the judicial courtyard and calling 3 judicial elders over? Yiqing Luo paused for a moment, her slender fingers caressed her pink lips as she smiled sweetly. Regarding this point, I hope Protector Fan can give a reasonable explanation. Aye. Nurse Fan's mind went blank under the pressure of the questions. Actually, these questions were easy to answer. But when Yiqing Luo's pair of smiling yet treacherous cold eyes looked over, his mind was filled with thoughts, but he couldn't spit out a single word. This kind of pressure. Dean Fan had only felt this from the Ling Long Palace master. Cough. Third judicial officer, who had been observing from the side, coughed lightly as he slowly walked towards the direction of Yiqing Luo and the Ling Long Palace Lord. Guardian Fan has been in the Ling Long Palace for 10 over years, and her loyalty towards the Ling Long Palace. I believe that Guardian Fan will not make things difficult for you for no reason. The meaning behind his words was, she believed Protector Fan's words. She also felt that Yiqing Luo had indeed humiliated the new female disciple. Following that, third judicial officer became gentle, as though he was a peacemaker, as he cupped his fists towards the Ling Long Palace Lord. Mr. Palace Lord, if both parties insist on their own version of events, then this matter should be investigated properly. We cannot let outsiders see our Ling Long Palace as a joke. Her words, although gentle, but the meaning expressed in her words, was extremely obvious. Yiqing Luo was only one person. We have to believe in our own family. If it was because of an outsider like Yiqing Luo, they would instead suspect their own family. Chapter 41-22. Yiqing Luo understood the deeper meaning in her words as her lips curled upwards as she smiled at her. Third judicial magistrate returned the same warm smile. That kind look seemed as though she was really thinking for her sake. The third judicial judge's words soothed Protector Fan's restless heart. She tried her best to calm herself down. Hallmaster, I am absolutely loyal to Linglong Palace and to you. I will not dare to say anything false. She raised her head with a look of facing death calmly. Regarding what Miss Yi said, I can explain. As she said that, she looked at Yi Qing Luo furiously, not concealing her disgust towards her at all. Yesterday, Miss Yi almost killed mysterious Yen Nv and forced Hallmaster Wu Yen to kneel down and apologize. This matter had already spread throughout the entire Linglong Palace. When I saw Miss Yi bullying the new female disciples, even mysterious Yen Nv was not Miss Ye's opponent. If I were to step forward to stop her, I'm afraid one of the 4 corpses would become my position. The judicial court is just next door. I only needed to rush over to the judicial court and invite the 3 judicial elders to uphold justice. But who knew? Guardian Fan kowtowed hard as she spoke in extreme agony. If I knew that she would be so vicious, even if I had to die, I would stop her. These words were spoken with great sincerity. When Yi Qing Luo heard it, she felt that she was really deranged, the main culprit who poisoned the new female disciples. Third Judicial Magistrate coincidentally opened her mouth again. Hallmaster, as for what happened later, the other 2 judicial elders and I can also prove. When we followed Guardian Fan over, we indeed saw these 4 new female disciples lying at Miss Ye's feet. She sighed again as she shook her head helplessly. In this kind of situation, anyone would misunderstand. It was inevitable that Guardian Fan would lose control of her emotions after all. In Guardian Fan's heart, all the new disciples in Linglong Palace are her children. Guardian Fan even cooperated as she hugged her own head and kowtowed hard onto the ground. Between the 2 of them, it left Yi Qing Luo with no way out. The second judicial judge tidied up his messy robe and proudly raised his eyebrows at the first judicial judge. The third judicial judge is right. When we rushed over, we indeed saw the female disciples falling at Miss Ye's feet. First judicial judge, am I right? The grand judge's face twitched. He gritted his teeth and said, yes. Seeing the first judicial magistrate giving in, the second judicial magistrate felt even more satisfied. There's no need for any investigation on this matter. Yi Qing Luo's intention to kill our Linglong Palace's people isn't just a matter of 1 or 2 days. She patted her sleeves again and looked sideways at the grand judge. Mysterious Maiden Wang's death can be proven to have nothing to do with Yi Qing Luo, but Mysterious Maiden Ning was indeed killed by Yi Qing Luo. This point is an undeniable fact. Miss Yi, if you really want to prove your innocence, you'd better cooperate with Linglong Palace's investigation. Third judicial judge persuaded Yi Qing Luo in a friendly tone. Hearing the 3 of them talking one after another, Yi Qing Luo kept a faint smile on her face as her arms crossed over her chest, without much change in her emotions. That was until the third judicial division brought the topic back to her. She lifted her eyelids lazily. She raised her hand and placed her slender jade-like fingers by her lips. Following that, she gave a lazy yawn. Chapter 41-23. Miss Yi. Second judicial officer's face sunk as he shouted, don't think that you can strut around Linglong Palace Hall just because of the Overlord's power. A life for a life is a matter of course. Even if the Overlord comes personally, you have to give us an explanation for this. Yi Qing Luo's indifference, as though she didn't put anything in her eyes, really infuriated the few of them. Her tone also became heavier. Yi Qing Luo tilted her head as she smiled faintly. Her slender hands slowly fell to the side of her body. The expression on her face was still that indifferent, without any ripples of emotions. Before she could open her mouth, a voice that was as cold as ice spoke. It was light and slow, yet it carried an irresistible pressure that easily suppressed the atmosphere in the area. Have you said enough? Just 4 simple words. Even the arrogant second judicial officer unconsciously lowered his head. When this voice rang, it made Yi Qing Luo raise her brows in astonishment as she looked at the lady beside her. Since the 3 of them started talking one after another, not giving anyone a chance to reply. Linglong Palace Lord had not spoken a word. At this moment, the moment she opened her mouth, it made one's heart tremble. The Linglong Palace Master's face was calm and indifferent. On her beautiful face, there was an oppressive feeling that made one unable to breathe. Her eyes were as deep as an abyss, so black that it was gloomy. The atmosphere instantly became extremely oppressive. Silence for a moment. Linglong Palace Lord spoke again, don't you like to talk? Why not continuing? The few of them shrunk back. Even second judicial officer followed suit and knelt on the ground. To be more precise, other than Yi Qing Luo, everyone else knelt on the ground. Just kneel. Yiqing Luo was like a crane in a flock of chickens. Second judicial officer quietly raised his head as he glanced sideways at Yiqing Luo, as though he was mocking her for her lack of manners. However, the palace master of the Linglong Palace was obviously angry. She didn't blame Yiqing Luo at this moment. Anyway, thinking of Yiqing Luo, this kind of young lady who didn't know etiquette. In the end, she was the one who suffered. But unexpectedly, things didn't turn out like what second judicial officer thought. Towards Yiqing Luo standing out. The Linglong Palace master did not have any reaction at all. Her cold gaze was fixed on the few people kneeling on the ground. Since you don't think you're wrong, why are you kneeling on the ground? The expressions of the few of them froze as they could not discern the emotions in the Linglong Palace lord's tone. No one dared to speak first. The second and third judicial officers exchanged glances and clenched their fists. Palace master, do you think that the deaths of these new female disciples have nothing to do with Miss Yi? We will come to a conclusion after the inspection. A cold light flashed across the face of the Linglong Palace master. Following that, she looked at Yiqing Luo as her gaze was indifferent. What does Miss Yi think? We're in your territory, so naturally we'll listen to you. Yiqing Luo spread out her hands as she replied indifferently. The Linglong Hall's hall master swept her gaze across the crowd. Soon, a few of the female disciples kneeling on the ground stood up and carried the corpses away. The female disciples were carrying it. The Linglong Palace lord said indifferently, Miss Yi doesn't look like someone who would lower herself. If you don't want to, I can't make things difficult for you. The meaning behind her words was not to act as though she was forced. Yiqing Luo's brows rose. This Linglong Palace lord's attitude. Chapter 41-24. She really couldn't tell what the Linglong Palace lord was thinking about. The Linglong Palace lord seemed to be standing on her side. But her attitude didn't seem like it. Moreover, she didn't believe that she didn't kill Mu Qiulan. If the Linglong Palace lord was standing on the side of the second judicial authorities, this attitude was obviously not right. Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as something flashed past her mind. Wait a minute, or perhaps the Linglong Palace lord had long seen that the people in the Linglong Palace were in turmoil. The Linglong Palace lord's attitude was only directed towards the second judicial authorities. It had nothing to do with her. It could be said that this person, if it was anyone else, could do it. As long as she could make use of it to deal with the second judicial authorities, Hall head Wu Yan and the others who already had disloyalty. She wanted to understand this point. Yiqing Luo could finally understand the Linglong Palace lord's unfathomable attitude. Because of the Linglong Palace lord's intervention, the group of people very quickly moved to the judicial courtyard. It was extremely quiet along the way. Only the sound of careful breathing could be heard. Yiqing Luo strolled around leisurely as she walked beside the Linglong Palace lord, as though she didn't care about the results of the inspection. Whereas the few judicial authorities were walking behind her. And Guardian Fan who was swaying as his legs turned into jelly. The Linglong Palace lord led Yiqing Luo to the main hall of the judicial courtyard to sit down. Very quickly, a female disciple served hot tea. Yiqing Luo raised the teacup and took a sip. The tea fragrance was rich and it was indeed a top-grade tea. The Linglong Palace lord also raised the teacup as she flicked the tea leaves on the surface. Her eyes drooped and no emotions could be seen from her gaze. The tea in the teacup was steaming hot, making her face look hazy. Miss Yi doesn't seem to care about the results of the inspection? The Linglong Palace lord suddenly opened her mouth as her gaze pierced through the mist, looking at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo shook the teacup and the water splashed in the cup as the fragrance of the tea assailed her nostrils. She laughed lightly, because the results. I had already guessed it. The innocent are innocent? The corners of the Linglong Hall master's mouth seemed to faintly curl upwards. It was a very shallow smile and her tone was somewhat mocking. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as her peripheral vision shot a glance at those few people standing by her side, as her eyes flashed with some unfathomable meaning, the innocent will be innocent. Unfortunately, there are some methods and there's no way to guarantee that the innocent will be innocent. She put down the teacup and propped up her chin with one hand, half propping herself up on the tea table. Whether or not I can be clear, it will depend on your attitude, Palace Master. The Linglong Palace Lord suddenly laughed. This was the first time Yiqing Luo had seen Linglong Palace Lord smile. She held the teacup and smiled gracefully. His laughter was clear and pleasant to the ears. Yiqing Luo also raised her head and exchanged glances with Linglong Palace's hall master as they both laughed at the same time. His laughter caused the second judicial officer and the others to look at each other in dismay. An ominous premonition rose from the bottom of his heart. But he seemed to have thought of something as he suppressed that feeling from the bottom of his heart. Only the amiable and benevolent face of the third judicator behind him flashed a trace of undetectable, strange emotion. Yiqing Luo just drank her tea quietly, waiting for the results. Approximately 1 hour later or so. Then a middle-aged woman dressed in dirty clothes and stained with blood stains walked into the main hall with a solemn expression. Second judicial officer hurriedly went up to her. "Old Su, how is it? What poison did those few female disciples suffer from? How long was the duration of the poisoning?" Chapter 41-25. The female disciple was poisoned with a rare poison, the poison meridian grass. Just a little bit was enough to kill a person. According to the results of the examination, the female disciples were poisoned for no more than an hour. Because it was a rare and powerful poison, the poison spread throughout his body in a short period of time. The middle-aged woman read out the autopsy report. Second preceptor and the others all smiled. "I knew it. You were the one who poisoned him, weren't you? Now that the evidence is conclusive, what else can you say?" The second judicial officer sneered and pointed at Yiqing Luo. According to the duration of the poisoning, it was totally compatible with Yiqing Luo's time. It was entirely possible for Yiqing Luo to commit the crime. Basically, it was confirmed that the female disciple's death was related to Yiqing Luo. Guard Fan immediately knelt down in front of the Linglong Palace Master and said word by word, "Lord Palace Master, the truth has been revealed." This subordinate did not speak a single word of falsehood. The Linglong Palace Lord sat there and did not speak. She did not even look at Protector Fan. It was impossible to tell what he was thinking. For a moment, the entire hall was filled with a strange silence. After a long while, the Grand Judge slowly walked out. She stared at Yiqing Luo and the expression on her face was rather complicated. "Yiqing Luo? Are you really the one who killed him?" The Great Judge's voice was a little tense. Yiqing Luo could tell. The Grand Judge didn't ask this because he was worried about her. Instead, he was worried about himself. Because, from the moment they found the female disciple's corpse, the Grand Inquisitor was speaking for her and had shown that he believed in her. He was really killed by her. In front of the second judicial system, the great judicial system was considered to have lost. This was a result that the great justice did not want to see no matter what. What else is there to ask? Old Su has already deduced the time of the poisoning. Second judicial judge interrupted. The time he was poisoned does not mean that Miss Yi was the one who poisoned him. Unless you have evidence or saw Miss Yi poison him with your own eyes. The first judicial judge's face darkened when he heard the second judicial judge's voice. She turned her head towards Yiqing Luo and asked once again, "Miss Yi, you're not the one who killed him, right?" Before the second judicial judge could speak, the judge was asking if she was the one who killed the man. Now the judge was asking whether she was the one who killed him or not. Was the first judicial officer using her as a tool to deal with the second judicial officer? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she gave a mocking smile. Seeing the sneer in her eyes, the great judge felt a little guilty. All right, don't interrogate a little girl like that." The third judicial judge had a warm smile on his face. He put one hand on the first judicial judge and the other on the second judicial judge. "It's very simple to prove that Miss Yi didn't poison him. As long as we can prove that Miss Yi doesn't have the poisonous scripture grass on her, isn't it?" "What kind of proof is this?" The second judicial judge flicked his sleeves. "After she poisoned it, she might have thrown the poisonous meridian grass away. When we rushed over with Protector Fan, it happened to be the time when the female disciples died. During that time, she didn't have the time to destroy the evidence," the third judicial judge said. "So this point can still be proven." When the second judicial judge heard this, he turned his head and snorted coldly, but he didn't refute. Third judicial judge beamed at Yiqing Luo. "Miss Yi, I'll have to trouble you to cooperate." Saying that, the three judges took the initiative to walk towards Yiqing Luo. Before they even got close. Chapter 41-26. Third judicial magistrate stopped in his tracks and explained with a smile. "Just checking, it won't hurt you." Yiqing Luo snorted lightly as she leaned against the back of the chair. She bent her elbow and propped up her chin as she looked at third judicial magistrate. "No need to check." "Miss Yi, what do you mean?" Third judicial magistrate asked in puzzlement. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. "I do have the poison scripture grass on me." The moment she said that, At that moment, the surrounding people all sucked in a breath of cold air. Each of them looked at Yiqing Luo in astonishment. Was this admitting? Second Judicial Magistrate laughed out loud as he looked at First Judicial Magistrate complacently. Did you hear that? She has already admitted. Ah. First Judicial Magistrate, you have been helping a murderer. And the person she killed is from Linglong Palace. Second Judicial Magistrate paused and sneered. From what I see, you, First Judicial Magistrate, don't treat our Linglong Palace's disciples seriously. First Judicial Magistrate's face darkened. She clenched her fists tightly to suppress the rising heat as she stared coldly at Second Judicial Magistrate. She wanted to refute but couldn't say a word. Second Judicial Magistrate felt even more annoyed when he saw this. He cupped his fists tightly and knelt down in front of Linglong Palace Master. Palace Master. This person has hurt our Linglong Palace's disciples many times. Now that the evidence is conclusive, would Palace Master please give the order to kill Yiqing Luo? This. Third Judicial Magistrate was shocked as he wanted to persuade Second Judicial Magistrate. But he looked at Yiqing Luo helplessly. Finally he sighed heavily. Miss Yi, how can you do this? If you have any dissatisfaction with Linglong Palace, you can tell the First Judicial Magistrate clearly. As she said that, she closed her eyes with a pained look. That is at least a fresh life and so young. I can't plead for you anymore. Plead for what? Men, suppress this murderer who killed Linglong Palace's disciples. We must use her blood to pay tribute to the dead disciples. Second Judicial Magistrate clamored. In this heavy atmosphere, a melodious laugh rang out, and it was extremely obvious. Everyone was stunned by this laughter. He immediately looked in the direction of the voice. The girl sitting on the chair covered her lips with her slender, jade-like hand. She was smiling so brightly that it was as if she was a beautiful flower. A pair of enchanting eyes curved into a long and narrow arc because of her smile. It was like a poppy in full bloom, slowly blooming at the end of his eyes. The girl slowly sat up straight. Her posture was elegant and noble. His every movement exuded an aura that caused others to tremble in fear. What are you laughing at? The second judge frowned and scolded. Yiqing Luo curled her lips and smiled sweetly. I can't help but want to laugh at your words. What do you mean? Yiqing Luo's eyes were full of ridicule. Those who don't know would think that my relationship with the third judicial officer is so good. It seems that, from the beginning to the end, other than putting all the blame on me, you haven't done anything to plead for me, have you? She made no effort to hide her sarcasm. It also directly moved the purpose of the tripartite justice system to the surface. Don't you like to pretend to be a good person? Don't you like to smooth things over? Then he would expose all of her intentions. Let's see how she could continue to pretend. As expected, the amiable and kind face of the third judicial judge suddenly froze. Her mouth moved. Chapter 41:27. Miss Yi, do you have any misunderstanding towards me? The third judicial magistrate adjusted his emotions and asked. Yiqing Luo's slender fingers brushed over her lips. Immediately she stood up slowly. The moment she stood up, the powerful and majestic aura emanated from her body. Obviously, she looked petite and harmless. But in her charming eyes and smile, it made one's back inexplicably cold. Yiqing Luo curled her red lips. Whether it's a misunderstanding or not, you know it clearly. Miss Yi. The third judicial magistrate's face stiffened and his expression was extremely ugly. I am absolutely not that kind of person. Yiqing Luo's pink lips deepened. The corners of her long and narrow eyes revealed a trace of coldness, like a stream of ice and snow. I have no interest in what kind of person you are. She said, it's just disgusting that you are putting on airs in front of me. If you like to maintain your good guy image, then stay away from me. The third judicial magistrate was infuriated. A murderous intent surged uncontrollably in his pair of dark eyes. Although it quickly disappeared in front of his eyes. But this murderous intent, Yiqing Luo could still see it clearly. She curved her lips. She couldn't control her emotions and couldn't help it. Her psychological quality was still too poor. Yiqing Luo. The second judicial magistrate stepped forward and pulled the third judicial magistrate behind him, then stared at Yiqing Luo angrily. What kind of person is the third judicial magistrate? We Linglong Palace know best. Don't think that you can bewitch the first judicial magistrate and sow discord between us and the third judicial magistrate. She sneered, her eyes were filled with hatred. Don't think that deliberately targeting the third judicial magistrate, You can overturn the fact that you killed 4 Linglong Palace's female disciples. The moment the second judicial magistrate finished his words, immediately, those Linglong Palace's female disciples who were surrounding the main hall were suddenly enlightened. This was Yi Qing Luo's purpose. Deliberately provoking the feelings between the judicial magistrates, and then using this to shift everyone's attention away from the new female disciples. Indeed, a sinister and cunning woman. Suddenly, among the female disciples, someone knelt down. She shouted loudly, "Hall Master, please uphold justice for Linglong Palace." The moment the words came out, the dozens of female disciples surrounding them were immediately spurred on. In addition to what the second judicial officer had just said, one by one they knelt on the ground. "Hall Master, please uphold justice. Hall Master, please avenge our dead sisters. Hall Master." For a moment, the strangely silent hall became noisy. When the second preceptor saw that there were so many female disciples cooperating with him, he immediately felt very confident. He raised his head high and sneered at the big hand, "Take him away." Soon the female guard rushed into the hall. One by one, they bowed towards Linglong Palace Lord who was seated on the main seat and went up to detain Yi Qing Luo. However, they had just taken a step forward. A cold and mocking voice sounded, "So, in your eyes I am still the Hall Master. You even know to bow to me." Every single word was heard clearly by his ears. It was as if a heavy boulder was pounding on everyone's heart. The moment the Palace Lord of the Linglong Palace spoke, at that moment the entire hall fell silent. The expressions of the second judge, Protector Fan, and the others who had been arrogant and pleased with themselves froze on their faces. Everyone's heart thumped furiously. Hall Master. What did this mean? Under the strange atmosphere it was silent for several breaths. Chapter 41-28. Second Judicator knelt down. That frightened the surrounding Linglong Palace's female disciples all knelt down. Hence it was the same as before. Everyone knelt down on the ground. Yi Qing Luo stood out like a crane among chickens. Her lips curled up as she slowly turned sideways and smiled at Linglong Palace Lord. "Actually, I also feel that. They are treating you as a decoration." Yi Qing Luo. Second Judicator shouted angrily, "Stop spouting nonsense over there." After he shouted, he immediately looked at the Linglong Palace Lord with fear and trepidation. "We are absolutely loyal to the Palace Lord. She's the one who's sowing discord." Yi Qing Luo smiled as she raised her slender eyebrows. The smile in her eyes added some unknown deeper meaning. "Really? Why is it that when I'm here listening to your long-winded talk, I feel?" Second Judicator, you are more like the Linglong Palace Lord. Yi Qing Luo's tone was frivolous. She said it in a casual manner. But the words between the words made one's heart palpitate. Second Judicator was so frightened that his face turned pale. "Yi Qing Luo, don't slander me. You're intentionally discrediting me in front of Lord Palace Lord." She was more like the Linglong Palace Lord? If these words were said in private, she would absolutely be filled with delight. She had always felt that she was the one who could truly take up the position of Linglong Palace Lord. But these words were placed in the open, especially in front of Linglong Palace Lord. If she provoked Linglong Palace Lord to think too much, Linglong Palace Lord started to be suspicious of her. Could her days in Linglong Palace Lord still be smooth sailing? Yi Qing Luo, that slut, how ruthless. Second Judicator was so infuriated that his chest felt stuffy, about to throw up blood. "Lord Palace Lord, I'm innocent. She's intentionally sowing discord, you mustn't believe." "Enough." Linglong Palace Lord squinted her eyes in displeasure, reflecting a chilly glint, like ice and snow, freezing the surrounding air. Linglong Palace Lord's expression turned ugly. A pair of eyes that seemed to be covered with frost contained a bit of inexplicable coldness. After stopping the second trial, she raised her eyes and met Yi Qing Luo's gaze as she spoke out coldly, "You enough, stop stirring up trouble over there." Yi Qing Luo shrugged her shoulders, raised her hand and made a zipper action on her mouth. After that, he pursed his lips and returned to his seat beside the Linglong Palace Lord. "Lord Hall Master." The second Hall Master shrunk his neck. The Linglong Palace Lord glanced at the second and third judges indifferently before raising her eyes and sweeping her gaze over the people kneeling on the ground in front of her. "All of you are making a ruckus over a little girl. Where is your sense of propriety?" No one dared to make a sound. The Linglong Palace Master's gaze was sharp, and the pressure of a superior person pressed down heavily. The air in the entire lobby became thin. Everyone felt suffocated. However, he did not dare to show any emotions. Fear was written all over everyone's face. Only Yiqing Luo, who was seated by the side, still had that lazy expression on her face, as though she didn't care about anything. Su Xiao. Ling Long Palace Lord opened her mouth again. Su Xiao, who was kneeling by the side, the lady in charge of the autopsy, responded, "I'm here. Check if Miss Ye's body has been contaminated with the poison scripture grass." Ling Long Palace Lord instructed calmly. Su Xiao kowtowed expressionlessly, "Yes." Following that, she stood up and walked towards Yiqing Luo. This time Yiqing Luo didn't evade. She was extremely cooperative. Chapter 41-29. After the inspection, Su Xiao returned to his original position and continued to kneel down. "How is it?" Ling Long Palace Lord asked. Su Xiao replied respectfully, "I did not find any traces of the poison scripture grass on Miss Yi." Ling Long Palace Lord's gaze swept towards Second Judicial Magistrate. "Second Judicial Magistrate, did you hear me clearly?" Second Judicial Magistrate shuddered. "Yes, I heard you clearly." "Su Xiao." The Ling Long Palace Master softly called out. Su Xiao seemed to understand the meaning of the Ling Long Palace Master's words. He expressionlessly said, "The poison meridian grass is extremely poisonous. So, if someone comes into contact with the poison meridian grass, their body will definitely be contaminated with its aura. No matter how careful the person who poisoned it is, there would definitely be traces on their body." Su Xiao's explanation, which meant that Yiqing Luo's disgust was completely excluded. Second Judicial Magistrate raised his head and widened his eyes as he pointed at Yiqing Luo. You are intentionally framing me?" Rejecting the Third Judicial Magistrate's inspection, and admitting that she had the poison scripture grass on her. Intentionally teasing them? Yiqing Luo shook her head with a grin. "What I said is the truth. I do have the poison scripture grass on me, but I didn't take it out." She touched the Netherworld Phoenix ring on her fingertip. "As for me, not only do I have the poison scripture grass, but I also have many other poisons that you can name or can't name. Do you want to try? She was a pill master. If she didn't have some random poison on her, she would be embarrassed to call herself a pill master, all right? Second Judicial Magistrate's face twitched as his breathing quickened. His face was green, red and black. "Palace Lord." The reversal of the situation made First Judicial Magistrate smile. She crawled a few steps forward and cupped her hands towards Ling Long Palace Lord. "The 4 new female disciples died because of the poison scripture grass. Since Miss Ye's innocence has been confirmed, the murderer must be someone else." She pointed to Second Judicial Magistrate. After the news was released, Second Judicial Magistrate had been insisting that Miss Yi was the murderer who poisoned the female disciples. "I feel that Second Judicial Magistrate and Guardian Fan are trying to frame Miss Yi, so I suggest that Su Xiao also check Second Judicial Magistrate and Guardian Fan." "Nonsense." Second Judicial Magistrate stared at First Judicial Magistrate in anger. "How could this elder poison my own disciple? Whether it's you or not, we'll know after the inspection." The Great Justice snorted. "Fine, I'll check." The second judge glared angrily at Su Xiao. "You check. Make him sincerely convinced." Su Xiao looked at the Ling Long Palace Master. The Palace Master of the Ling Long Palace nodded. He stood up and walked towards the Second Judicial Elder. "Second Judicial Elder, please excuse me." Su Xiao stretched out his hand towards the Second Judicial Officer. Suddenly, a cry of surprise rang out from the crowd. "Guardian Fan! Protector Fan is dead. What's going on? How did Guard Fan die?" The female guards kneeling on the ground looked at Protector Fan, who had suddenly fallen, and let out panicked cries. "It's poison. She took poison. Poison meridian grass." After Nurse Fan fell to the ground, she slowly saw a patch of purplish-black color spread over her face. Just like the 4 female disciples who had died earlier. Protector Fan's death shocked everyone. Su Xiao immediately walked towards Guard Fan and felt her pulse. After a while, she shook her head at Ling Long Palace Lord. "Guard Fan consumed the poison scripture grass and died from the poison. The poison scripture grass was found on her fingers." This was because Su Xiao wanted to check her and Second Judicial Magistrate. Chapter 41-30. Second Judicial Officer had quick reflexes. After realizing this point, she immediately changed her expression as she looked at Guardian Fan's corpse in astonishment. It's her. She poisoned those 4 female disciples. Second Judicial Officer panted heavily as her hands trembled as she pointed at Guardian Fan before her eyes widened as she looked at Third Judicial Officer. We were all cheated. The tripartite judicial system was also stunned by the sudden change in the scene before them. After hearing what Second Judicial Officer said, only then did she come back to her senses. She immediately kowtowed to Linglong Palace Lord. Palace Lord, it's Guardian Fan. Guardian Fan made use of us. Everyone was taken aback when they heard this, looking at the two judicial officers kneeling on the ground and then at Guardian Fan's corpse. It seemed, right from the start, it was indeed Guardian Fan who swore that she saw Yiqing Luo bullying the female disciples. Then she specially looked for the judicial elder to stop Yiqing Luo. But she coincidentally saw the scene of the female disciples collapsing at Yiqing Luo's feet. From then on, they all felt that the murderer was Yiqing Luo. So, from the start to the end, it was all Guardian Fan's doing? She herself poisoned the female disciples and shifted the blame to Yiqing Luo? In this way, everything could be explained clearly. Linglong Palace Lord looked quietly at the two people kneeling on the ground. Her expression was indifferent. He really couldn't tell what she was thinking in her heart. Linglong Palace Lord remained silent. Second Judicial Officer and Third Judicial Officer were feeling apprehensive. Linglong Palace Lord remained silent. The others in the main hall didn't dare to speak either. The atmosphere was so strange that it started to fill the air. It was so oppressive that everyone felt suffocated. Then the Linglong Palace's palace master's finger lightly tapped on the table. A soft dong sound was heard. Like a bell, it fell on everyone's heart. Usually your thoughts are deeper than the other. The palace master of the Linglong Palace chuckled and a sharp light flashed in her eyes. A mere palace master is able to play you all around. This makes this palace master have no choice but to reconsider whether you all have the ability to take on such an important role as justice. Linglong Palace Lord's words were spoken very softly, but it was a tone that could not be refuted. When the second judicial judge and the third judicial judge heard this, they were so shocked that they felt as if a boulder was pounding on their chests. Their fingers curled up and their bodies tensed up. Palace Master, we are only concerned about the Linglong Palace and the chaos. After this lesson we definitely won't do it again next time. As they spoke, the two of them kowtowed to the ground. Ever since Yiqing Luo arrived at Linglong Palace, the Linglong Palace Lord's attitude was obviously not right. From the very beginning they had a feeling. The Linglong Palace's palace master seemed to want to make a move on them, the main hall's hall masters. However, a guess was just a guess. Hearing the palace master of the Linglong Palace mention that they would be considering their positions, it was a completely different feeling. They had spent most of their lives in the Linglong Palace. If they were to be stripped of their judicial positions now, what face would they have left to remain in the Linglong Palace Hall? Linglong Palace Lord's gaze unnoticeably shot a glance at Yiqing Luo as she spoke calmly. The person whom you need to apologize to is not me. Second Judicial Officer's body stiffened as he abruptly looked towards Yiqing Luo. In the depths of his eyes, a hurricane was surging. Chapter 41-31. On the other hand, Third Judicial Magistrate immediately put on a smile and turned her kneeling position towards Yiqing Luo. Miss Yi, I'm old and muddled, believing in Guardian Fan's nonsense, so I misunderstood you. Her voice trembled slightly and her tone was apologetic at the right time. She knew when to yield and when to stand tall. Third Judicial Magistrate's apology made Second Judicial Magistrate's expression stiffen. Asking her to apologize to a stinky lass who was still wet behind the ears? How could she possibly do it? Second Judicial Magistrate's entire being was resisting to apologize to Yiqing Luo. But when she raised her head and wanted to express her grievances to Linglong Palace Lord, but she met with Linglong Palace Lord's sharp gaze. That heavy gaze made Second Judicial Magistrate's heart tighten. His pupils dilated unconsciously. Finally, under the humiliation and unwillingness, she slowly moved her direction and knelt towards Yiqing Luo. Only before she could squeeze out an apology from the slits of her teeth. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards as she gave a lazy smile. There's no need to apologize. Second Judicial Magistrate swallowed back the words that were about to come out of her mouth as she silently thought. At least she had some eyesight. She knew that she couldn't accept her apology. This thought had just flashed past her mind. She heard the young lady's next sentence, which was mixed with a clear and melodious laughter. Apologies against one's conscience, I've heard too many of them and it's scary. I don't want to face 10 overkillers when I wake up at night. She put on a posture as she patted her chest. As for me, I'm just a weak young lady and I'm very timid, so I'll be afraid. Second Judicial Magistrate's face instantly turned gloomy upon hearing Yiqing Luo's words. Her body stiffened as her eyes stared unblinkingly at Yiqing Luo. The bottom of her eyes was filled with viciousness. Miss Yi, how could this be an apology against one's conscience? Third Judicial Magistrate's amiable voice was heard as she leaned forward and bumped into Second Judicial Magistrate imperceptibly, reminding her. Immediately after, he looked at Yiqing Luo with an amiable smile. This matter is indeed my and Second Judicial Officer's fault. We are also sincerely apologizing. We should not just listen to what we see on the surface and make arbitrary judgments. This matter has also taught us a heavy lesson. If Miss Ye's anger cannot be appeased, we are willing to accept punishment as our apology to you, and the tuition fees for this training. The third judicial judge's words were very beautiful. His feelings were deep and sincere. It sounded like a sincere apology. He also made it clear that he was wrong. It also showed that through this lesson, he had reflected on it and would definitely correct himself. In that case, this was also a hint to the palace master of the Linglong Palace not to give up their position so easily. Yiqing Luo's lips curled upwards, her eyes were extremely clear. He was not affected by the words of the third judicial judge at all. She still held her chin lazily, raised her slender eyebrows, and looked at them with a faint smile. That look. It was obvious mockery. The second justice was already filled with resentment. After seeing Yiqing Luo's expression, he was even more unresigned. Yiqing Luo, why must you be so overbearing? We've already apologized, what more do you want? She was extremely infuriated as she shouted harshly. This sharp shout. Instantly, it caused all movement around to quiet down. The third judicial judge's smiling face froze. She really wanted to kick this pig-like teammate to death. Chapter 4132. Actual harm? Yiqing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. Bringing me to Linglong Palace Hall without any explanation, and then your mysterious fairy came looking for trouble and then? Inexplicably framing me. Her long and narrow eyes rose slightly, forming an arc with a layer of coldness. I am after all a 15-year-old young lady. The trauma to my heart is greater than anything else. The second judicial officer trembled in anger when she heard this obvious nonsense. If Yiqing Luo's heart was hurt, she wouldn't believe it even if she was beaten to death. Even if her heart was hurt, Yiqing Luo wouldn't feel any trauma at all. The second judicial officer was speechless. The third judicial officer lowered her head as her eyes sunk slightly. A cold glint flashed across his covered eyes. How could she not hear it? Yiqing Luo's words were intentionally conveying her grievance to the Lord of Linglong Palace Hall. Grievance? When had Yiqing Luo ever been wronged? If it wasn't for Yiqing Luo who took the initiative to follow the judicial officer to Linglong Palace Hall. Based on Yiqing Luo's character, who could bring her to Linglong Palace Hall. This was also why. Since Yiqing Luo arrived at Linglong Palace Hall yesterday, she was arranged to stay next to the judicial courtyard, and the judicial officer would occasionally go over to Yiqing Luo. Moreover, yesterday Wu Fu'er came looking for trouble. Wasn't she carried down in the end? And Yiqing Luo didn't receive any punishment. Instead it was Wu Fu'er who almost lost her life, and even implicated Hall Master Wu Yen to be punished. Today the so-called framing Yiqing Luo was an outsider right from the start. She was in a state of watching a show from the start, completely sure that she was safe and sound. She had the cheek to say that she was wronged? The ones who were wronged were them, right? But no matter how turbulent the third judicial officer's heart was, they were unable to calm down. At this moment they didn't open their mouths to express any feelings. Missy. Suddenly the Lord of Linglong Palace Hall opened her mouth slowly. Her voice was deep and cold, without any ripples. Yiqing Luo raised her brows as she looked at the Lord of Linglong Palace Hall. It seems that Miss Yi has a lot of complaints about the Linglong Palace, said the Linglong Palace Lord in a very calm voice. Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows as she raised her teacup and took a sip. After the Linglong Palace master asked that question, the entire hall was dead silent. Yiqing Luo lifted the cup and the sound of the teacups colliding against each other was extremely clear. Everyone couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. It was until Yiqing Luo placed the teacup down when she met Linglong Palace Lord's gaze with a smile. That's right, there are a lot of complaints. Everyone sucked in a cold breath. In front of the master. Even if he had complaints in his heart, he couldn't say it out loud. Everyone looked at the Linglong Palace Lord with trepidation, fearing that the Linglong Palace Lord would fly into a rage. Unexpectedly, the Linglong Palace Lord laughed in a low voice. The smile on her face, which she pretended to be old and mature, actually showed a little bit of her beauty. "Since that is the case, this palace master will have to take responsibility for it," said the Linglong Palace Master with a light smile. Just as she finished speaking, her gaze suddenly changed. She coldly swept her gaze over the people kneeling in front of her. "As members of the judiciary, you listened to slanderous rumors and injured others without any evidence. Furthermore, you have no intention of repenting." Chapter 41-33. Second Judicial Officer's eyes were filled with shock as she looked at Linglong Palace Lord in disbelief. She opened her mouth wide as she couldn't believe what she had heard. However, the Linglong Palace's palace master's ice-cold expression and frost-like gaze that landed on her body caused the doubts and unwillingness in her heart to become stuck in her throat. It was like that icy cold gaze grabbed her by the throat, making her unable to say a single word. Linglong Palace Lord's icy cold gaze slowly shifted onto the third judicial officer. That serene gaze made the third judicial officer tremble as her entire body tensed up as she knelt straight. Linglong Palace Lord stared at the third judicial officer as she spoke in a deep voice. "Third judicial officer, on account that you have a good attitude in admitting your mistake, you shall face the wall and reflect on your mistakes. After you have thought it through, come see me again." The third judicial officer's eyes were filled with gratitude as she immediately knelt down as her forehead pressed against the ground. Her voice was trembling as she replied in ecstasy, "Thank you, Palace Lord." Following that, she shifted towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. "Thank you, Miss Yi." After thanking Yi Qing Luo, she slowly raised her head as she was filled with gratitude as she used a sonorous and forceful voice to speak. "I am willing to go to Linglong Palace Hall to copy Buddhist scriptures, to wash away my vicious aura and also to pray for Palace Lord and Miss Yi." Third Judicial Officer's sincere and serious words. Compared to the shock and astonishment on the second Judicial Officer's face, as well as that venomous gaze towards Yi Qing Luo, it formed a sharp contrast. After the third Judicial Officer expressed her attitude, Linglong Palace Lord's red lips curled slightly as she looked at Yi Qing Luo. "Miss Yi, feel that what I have done is considered as being responsible for you." Since Linglong Palace Lord opened her mouth, Yi Qing Luo crossed her arms as she leaned against the back of the chair lazily. Her long and narrow eyes squinted slightly as her brows exuded a bewitching look. Especially now, when she heard Linglong Palace Lord's question, she slightly turned her eyes sideways. That exquisite side profile made one's heart palpitate. But that palpitate revealed a kind of nervousness which made their hearts tighten abruptly. Yi Qing Luo lazily lifted her eyelids as her lips curled upwards slightly as she looked at Linglong Palace Lord with a smile which didn't look like a smile. If Palace Lord feels that this is considered, then so be it. She naturally understood the reason behind the Linglong Palace Master's actions. Although the Palace Master of the Linglong Palace seemed to be helping her on the surface. But in the end, she was the Palace Master of the Linglong Palace. Compared to an outsider like her, the disciples of the Linglong Palace were the ones that the Linglong Palace Master wanted to protect. In order to give her an explanation, and to protect the disciples of the Linglong Palace, the Palace Master of the Linglong Palace had purposely taken the initiative to propose the punishment for the two judges. Moreover, the punishment was neither light nor heavy. In any case, he had spared their lives. Even though the Linglong Palace's Palace Master had made it sound so serious, the truth was that she had managed to protect those two's judicial positions. The moment the Linglong Palace Master opened her mouth, she even mentioned the punishment. From Yi Qing Luo's standpoint, she should be filled with gratitude, thanking the Linglong Palace Lord for being willing to step forward to settle this matter. Then he agreed to Linglong Palace Master's punishment. In this way, everything that the second and third judicial authorities had done to her was written off. Both of their positions were saved. This was a good plan. But the Linglong Palace Master had calculated wrongly. Yi Qing Luo wasn't someone who would follow the steps and walk down. If she agreed to it this time, it would only make the Linglong Palace feel that she was easy to talk to, easy to bully. Chapter 41-34. Yi Qing Luo wasn't in the mood to tangle with the people from Linglong Palace. Especially when the Linglong Palace Lord mentioned half a month's time to reflect on her mistakes, it was pure nonsense. Half a month later, she would no longer be in Linglong Palace. Whether the second judicial officer had any repentance or not, wasn't it all up to Ling Long Palace Lord? But this was after all the punishment which the Ling Long Palace Lord had personally set. If she were to reject it hastily, it would only cause the Ling Long Palace Lord to be unhappy with her. In other people's territory, it was better to be more obedient. Therefore, her answer was already very implicit. She gave the Ling Long Palace Lord some face and also hinted that even if she agreed to the suggestion which the Ling Long Palace Lord suggested, it was because she was unwilling and unwilling. As expected, after hearing Yi Qing Luo's reply, the Ling Long Palace Lord's expression sunk slightly. Her lips curled into a smile as her legs slumped down. Then, based on Miss Ye's opinion, what should we do? Almost every single word was spat out from the Ling Long Palace Lord with a tone of gnashing her teeth. Her entire face was almost covered with a patch of black. As long as Miss Yi can forgive our disrespectful actions, I am willing to accept any punishment. The third judicial officer spoke out at the same time. His tone was filled with sincerity and determination. One of them was suppressing his anger. Another was apologizing sincerely. No matter how they looked at it, they felt that Yi Qing Luo really didn't know what was good for her. The surrounding female disciples' hearts were about to jump out of their throats. This was the first time they had seen such an arrogant and daring person in their entire lives. To everyone, the punishment which the Ling Long Palace Lord had suggested was already very heavy. This was totally because she cared about Yi Qing Luo, hence she punished the two judicial officers in this way. But not only did Yi Qing Luo not accept the Ling Long Palace Lord's good intentions, she even put on a reluctant expression. Could it be that their third judicial officers weren't humble enough? Could it be that Yi Qing Luo wanted all the disciples of Ling Long Palace to kneel down in front of her to plead for mercy? Everyone's gaze towards Yi Qing Luo was filled with disgust and displeasure. The surrounding people's emotions. Yi Qing Luo naturally felt it. But she didn't even have any reaction when the Ling Long Palace Lord's expression changed. Not to mention caring about those people's emotions. Yi Qing Luo touched her smooth and exquisite chin as her pink lips slowly curled upwards. He looked at the three judges with a faint smile. This third judicial judge was truly a talent. He knew when to yield and when to stand tall. He completely cooperated with the Ling Long Palace Master. His attitude of admitting his mistake was sincere. He took the initiative to invite them to the ancestral hall and even copied Buddhist scriptures. As the person involved, she was almost touched by the sincere apology of the three judicial authorities. Since Ling Long Palace's hall master has personally come forward, I naturally follow the host's wishes as a guest. Yi Qing Luo replied with a smile, as her face was filled with an indifferent smile. The Ling Long Palace master's face sank. Yi Qing Luo's voice rang once again, but I have another matter which I need to trouble Ling Long Palace Lord with. Why would Miss Yi bother the Ling Long Palace? The Ling Long Palace master smiled coldly. Facing the Ling Long Palace master's ridiculing tone, Yi Qing Luo's expression didn't change. I just arrived at the Ling Long Palace yesterday and don't know Protector Fan at all. She can't possibly frame me for no reason and even want my life. If you say there's no one else behind this, I don't believe it. When Yi Qing Luo's words were clearly transmitted into everyone's ears, instantly it set off a raging wave. Like a huge rock, smashing into a calm lake. Chapter 41-35. You're arrogant and domineering, arrogant and egotistical. Framing is because Guardian Fan can't stand you. Second judicial judge blamed Yi Qing Luo for his punishment. The moment he said it, it was a sharp ridicule. Yi Qing Luo couldn't help but burst out laughing. Her long and narrow eyes were curved upwards. So, you Ling Long Palace Hall can't stand someone, so you want to frame the other party? Tiske, I really feel bitterly disappointed for those disciples who were wronged by you. You're spouting nonsense. Second judicial judge's face flushed red as he was infuriated, but he couldn't refute Yi Qing Luo at all. Yi Qing Luo blinked innocently. What's the matter, second judicial judge? I'm just following what you said and deduced. Is there anything wrong with that? Second judicial judge's chest heaved up and down as he clenched his fists. Yi Qing Luo? You. Shut up. Ling Long Palace Lord's sleeves moved. A gust of wind swept towards second judicial judge's face. Second judicial judge cried out miserably as he was sent flying by that gust of wind and fell heavily onto the ground. Since second judicial judge refuses to accept my punishment, then, from today onwards, second judicial judge will be stripped of his judicial position. Linglong Palace Lord was obviously angry as his tone was filled with chilliness. Second Judicial Judge spat out blood as his throat was filled with a fishy sweetness, without any energy to speak. Linglong Palace Lord restrained his emotions and looked towards Yiqing Luo as he said word by word, "Miss Ye's request, I will try my best to do it. I will personally investigate this matter. Are you satisfied with this, Miss Yi?" Yiqing Luo's long and narrow eyes rose as she smiled. "Since Palace Lord is so reasonable, I can rest assured. Then I'll have to trouble Palace Lord." Linglong Palace Lord flicked his sleeves as he turned around and left the main hall. Before he left, his cold gaze swept past the two judicial judges who were kneeling on the ground. His expression was as cold as ice. The next moment he flicked his sleeves again and left without turning back. Second Judicial Judge seemed to have lost all his energy as he staggered and fell onto the ground. A big mouthful of blood flowed down her chin and onto her robe. Her eyes were wide open, unable to recover from the huge change. The third Judicial Judge glanced at the second Judicial Judge and slowly stood up from the ground. She cupped her fists towards Yiqing Luo and left the main hall. Everyone present was silent for a while. He was still unable to recover from the shock just now. Did the Temple Master directly remove the second judicial officer from his position? The current second judicial system was no longer the second judicial system? There was a portion of them who were even more curious towards Yiqing Luo. It was rumored that this young lady named Yiqing Luo was the murderer who killed Linglong Palace's mysterious maiden. This trip to Linglong Palace was to investigate the truth behind Yiqing Luo killing Linglong Palace's profound maiden. Why, would the Temple Master be so fearful of her? Yes, it was fear. In everyone's eyes, the Palace Master was an extremely cold woman. There was basically nothing that could affect her emotions. But, in front of Yiqing Luo, the Palace Master had given in repeatedly. He had also agreed to Yiqing Luo's request several times. What on earth was going on? Because of the Linglong Palace Master's attitude, everyone's attitude towards Yiqing Luo had an earth-shattering change. Chapter 4136. The minute this sentence was said, those female guards who were originally searching Yiqing Luo's body for the poisonous scripture grass. They changed their direction and swarmed towards the second judicial magistrate. They lifted her up and swiftly walked out of the main hall. The second judicial magistrate was first stunned, and when she was lifted up by a few female guards, she immediately started cursing out in embarrassment. But her mouth was directly gagged. Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes as she watched the second judicial magistrate's figure disappear before she slowly retracted her gaze. She ignored the surrounding people, casting various gazes at her. She directly walked back to her own room. Towards the Lord of Linglong Palace's attitude towards her, Yiqing Luo was more or less surprised. She didn't know if it was because she was afraid of her Overlord's Woman title, or there was some other motive. But, regarding the Lord of Linglong Palace's punishment towards those two judicial magistrates, Yiqing Luo actually didn't put it to heart. Because these two judicial magistrates had at least 20 years of online experience in Linglong Palace, and also had a portion of their own power. The Lord of Linglong Palace would absolutely not break the balance of Linglong Palace because of her. The punishment now was merely a superficial act, putting on a show for her. Perhaps tomorrow, that second judicial magistrate would come knocking on her door and apologize again. Following that, the Lord of Linglong Palace would say something else. This matter would then be left unsettled. Otherwise, the Lord of Linglong Palace wouldn't have said that it was only to let the second judicial magistrate reflect for half a month. If it wasn't for the fact that the second judicial magistrate's actions were a slap on the Lord of Linglong Palace's face, the Lord of Linglong Palace wouldn't be so angry at the end. Yiqing Luo just pushed the door and entered the room. The expression on her face had some subtle changes. She silently turned around and closed the door. Following that, she walked into the inner room with light footsteps. As expected, a slender figure stood in the middle of the inner room. That man was dressed in a black robe, covering his entire body. Hearing footsteps, that man turned around and the black eyes under the black robe stared at Yiqing Luo. "What are you here for again?" Yiqing Luo walked forward, past that man and sat on a chair by the side. That person stared at Yiqing Luo for a long time. His voice was deep. "I want to see you." Yiqing Luo's hand, which was holding the teacup, shook a little. "Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace, are you too bored because you have nothing better to do?" She simply put down the teacup and looked at that person with a faint smile. "Logically speaking, your Palace of Darkness is not having an easy time now. Are you really that free to come to Linglong Palace so many times? She paused for a moment, then lifted her elbow and supported her chin. She giggled, or should I say, Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace, your mission is in this Linglong Hall, right? Master doesn't know that I'm here. The Palace Master of Gloomy Palace shook her head. I'm just worried about you. Ha. Yiqing Luo didn't believe his words. Which one of his actions wasn't inspired by someone else? How could the true mastermind of the Dark Shadow Palace not know his every move? In front of her, he was always affectionate as if he really loved her till the end of time. Doesn't your teeth ache? She felt sour all over. It doesn't matter if you believe me or not, I know very well what I'm doing. The Palace Master of Gloomy Palace saw the ridicule in Yiqing Luo's eyes. He pursed his lips as his voice sounded a little hoarse. The pitch-black eyes under the black robe also had an extremely faint layer of dimness. Chapter 4137. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but laughed. These words, are they what that person asked you to say? No. Palace Lord of Abyss Palace clenched his fists tightly as his black robe revealed a pair of tranquil black eyes. I'm serious, if you continue to stay in Linglong Palace, I'm afraid you will not be able to leave this place in future. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. How do you know? I know you don't believe me. He laughed bitterly. But, have you ever thought about why you've been in Linglong Palace for one day and one night, your brothers and Overlord still haven't rushed over to Linglong Palace? When he mentioned the two words Overlord, he was obviously conflicted. Yiqing Luo's eyes flickered slightly as she maintained a calm expression. What do you mean? The surroundings of Linglong Palace has already set up an enchantment. Even if your brothers knew that you've been brought away by Linglong Palace's judicial officer, they wouldn't be able to find you. Speaking of this, his tone was filled with unwillingness, but he had no choice but to continue. Based on the Overlord's ability, if he knew that you've disappeared after going to Linglong Palace, he would definitely disregard everything to find you. But he still hasn't appeared. Haven't you thought about these problems? Yiqing Luo remained silent. She had naturally thought about these problems before, but she didn't think about it in detail. With the Profound Phoenix Ring and Profound Dragon Ring's connection, it shouldn't be difficult for DMO Xian to find her. Unless the mastermind of Palace of Abyss had interfered. This thought flashed past her mind, and Yiqing Luo's pupils suddenly contracted as she stared at the man in front of her. Palace of Abyss collaborated with Linglong Palace? She asked this question out loud. But Yiqing Luo still felt that something was amiss. If Linglong Palace really collaborated with Palace of Abyss, why was it that she couldn't sense any evil chi in Linglong Palace? No matter if it was the second judicial officer or the third judicial officer, there wasn't any remnant of the evil chi on them. No. He only spat out two words, and without any other explanation he urged again, believe me this once and leave Linglong Palace now, I don't want you to get hurt again. Towards his denial, Yiqing Luo was still suspicious. To tell the truth, she had guessed right from the start that there was some special connection between Linglong Palace and Palace of Abyss. The Chief Justice of the Linglong Palace brought her to the Linglong Palace. Yiqing Luo had been guessing that it was possible that Secluded Palace was making use of Linglong Hall to delay her time. But now, the Palace Master of the Secluded Darkness Palace wanted her to leave the Linglong Palace immediately. This was a little thought-provoking. Yiqing Luo remained silent for a moment, as her pink lips pursed slightly, and an extremely faint smile surfaced. You said Linglong Palace will be in danger, and it has nothing to do with Secluded Darkness Palace? Then, you should at least tell me, what danger does this Linglong Palace have? The Palace Master of Secluded Darkness Palace did not reply immediately. He lowered his head in silence. The black robe on his head covered his entire face. His entire body exuded an aura of conflict and struggle. Yiqing Luo didn't rush him. The two of them remained silent. After a long time, only then did he slowly move. He raised his head and said, the Palace Master of the Linglong Palace wants to groom you to be the next Palace Master of the Linglong Palace. After he said that, Yiqing Luo was stunned, while the Palace Master of the Netherworld Palace was silent. She had imagined countless of possibilities in her mind, but she had never thought that it would be this point. Groom her to become the Palace Master of the Linglong Palace. Chapter 4138. She had just arrived at the Linglong Palace Hall, and she had already caused a huge commotion. She will be the Hall Master? Aren't you afraid that the Linglong Palace Hall will collapse? The palace master of the Linglong Palace has taken a liking to you, and she has also taken a liking to the person behind you. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace pursed his lips, and his voice was a little hoarse. Otherwise, why do you think she would tolerate you so much? She's just trying to lower your guard against her. He paused for a moment before continuing. Do you know why the Linglong Palace was able to take root in the Earth domain for the past few hundred years? Yiqing Luo shook her head. Don't know. The Linglong Palace is not as miraculous as the people in the land make it out to be. It is also not as the people in the land think, where it represents justice and protects the peace of the land. He lowered his head and said in a low voice, the existence of the Linglong Palace is nothing more than a place that specializes in finding a body that can match its power. And you have fulfilled the requirements of the Linglong Palace. This sentence sounded extremely familiar. If I remember correctly, back then, Old Lai had also mentioned the Linglong Palace to her. He had always said that the Linglong Palace was not a good place. It sounded familiar, a place to find a body that matched his strength. Those Empyrean fairies were merely puppets created by the Linglong Palace. However, Old Lai did not elaborate on the specifics. Yiqing Luo narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? The palace master of the Netherworld Palace explained, you are now the successor that the Linglong Palace master has chosen. Your body will become the puppet of the Linglong Palace master. Puppet? It was this word again. What kind of existence was this Linglong Palace? In any case, Yiqing Luo, leave Linglong Palace first. You must not become Linglong Palace's puppet. He didn't continue speaking as he started to persuade her. In Yiqing Luo's heart, she was still pondering over what he said about the puppet and finding a compatible body. She looked up at him and asked, how do you know about the Linglong Palace? The palace master of the Netherworld Palace sighed. I heard it from Master. Master? He was the person behind the scenes of the Dark Palace. He was the real culprit who had been plotting against her from behind. What that person said, Yiqing Luo expressed that she definitely had a motive. When Master mentioned the Linglong Palace, he didn't know that you were there. He only warned me not to provoke the Linglong Palace. Knowing that Yiqing Luo wouldn't believe his master, he explained. You don't know? How could that person not know her whereabouts? Yiqing Luo expressed her disbelief. Moreover, that person did not look like the kind of person who would care about his disciple. It was a strange warning. Were they really afraid that he would provoke the Linglong Palace? Or was he trying to use his mouth to make her go against the Linglong Palace? Yiqing Luo expressed her doubts. I'm telling the truth. Yiqing Luo, I took the risk of being discovered by Master, taking the risk of letting Master know that I already have a disloyal heart, to sneak into the Linglong Palace just because I care about you. I don't want you to become a puppet of the Linglong Palace. Yiqing Luo's suspicion and silence deeply pierced his heart and his eyes. He staggered a step back. His body swayed a little. He raised one hand and pressed it on his chest. He pulled it up forcefully and raised his head. That pair of dark eyes under the black robes stared at her without blinking. Chapter 41-39. His voice was filled with sourness, as though he was choking with sobs. Somewhat painful. Yiqing Luo's face was still devoid of emotions. She looked at the man in front of her calmly, listening to his bitter and powerless words. He couldn't blame her for being too cold. But the other party was her enemy's man. He was the disciple of the person who had tried to take her life several times and struck out at her and the people around her. Because of the person behind the scenes in secluded palace, her brothers had already suffered too much. She had also almost lost her life several times. If it wasn't for her good luck, if it wasn't for Dmo Shen's protection, she might have let that person get his way long ago. So to let her face this person in front of her, the palace lord of secluded palace on the surface, the disciple of the person behind the scenes. How could she trust her? Even if he was sincere. He was sincere, not wanting her to get hurt and taking such a huge risk to specially tell her all of this. Who could guarantee that this wasn't that person's scheme? It wasn't that she was panicking. But that person's temper was just so despicable. She had to guard against him. You still don't believe me? The young lady's silence broke his last persistence. He burst out laughing. His body staggered backward several steps. As he laughed, his voice turned hoarse and astringent. If it was any other lady, perhaps she would be feeling heartache and guilt now. Yiqing Luo's gaze didn't change at all as she spoke calmly. You also said that the Linglong Palace's surroundings have already formed an enchantment barrier. Even if I want to leave, there's no way, isn't it? I can bring you away. The palace lord of secluded palace suddenly raised his head as his tone was filled with joy. He took quick steps towards Yiqing Luo as he stretched out his hand in an attempt to hold her arm. "Leave with me. I can bring you out." Yiqing Luo tilted her body slightly as she avoided his outstretched hand. The palace lord of secluded palace was stunned as he stared at his empty hand and slowly retracted it. His fingers tightened as his excitement and joy seemed as though it was just an illusion earlier. Yiqing Luo looked at the man whose head was hung low as she gave a low laugh. In her laughter, there were hints of ridicule. "Palace lord of secluded darkness. Since you can enter and exit Linglong Hall freely then Xian can too, isn't that so?" The body of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace suddenly stiffened. Yiqing Luo's laughter was still ringing in his ears. "Thank you for your concern, I appreciate your intention, but I still want to wait for Xian to pick me up." Everyone knew that she had followed the Grand Judge to the Linglong Palace. If she left with the palace master of secluded darkness palace, who knew? After leaving the Linglong Palace, would the person behind the scenes appear? At that time, DMO Xian would go to the Linglong Palace to look for her. But she was in danger. The eyes of the palace master of the Netherworld Palace dimmed. His face, which was hidden under the black robe, was pitch black. He clenched his fists. Suddenly, his backhand swiftly grabbed towards Yiqing Luo's wrist. His voice was a little anxious. "Every moment you stay in the Linglong Palace is dangerous. I can't see you in danger. You don't know how terrifying the Linglong Palace is and don't know what kind of puppet you will become after you become the palace master of the Linglong Palace. Must bring you away." His actions were fast and accurate, adding on to the fact that it was sudden. Yiqing Luo wasn't able to evade in time. Her wrist was locked tightly in his palm. She frowned in pain as she tried to struggle. Chapter 4140. Bam! The sound of the room door being smashed open was heard. The wooden board shattered and fell onto the ground. "Trying to leave?" A lady's stern voice was heard from the door. Immediately following that, Linglong Palace Lord brought along 2 judicial officers as she rushed into the room. And outside the room, there were at least a few hundred female disciples. The current Linglong Palace Lord's expression was gloomy as she stared deadly at the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace. Third Judicial Officer's usual amiable face was now covered with a solemn expression. Her gaze swept past the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace and subsequently fell onto Yiqing Luo. There was an obvious ridicule in her eyes. But very quickly it was replaced by anger. "Is Linglong Palace a place where you can come and go as you please?" Outside the room, there were orderly footsteps as the shadows covered the sky and earth. Yiqing Luo looked through the broken door and saw a huge crowd outside the door. Thinking about it, Linglong Palace's disciples had all gathered over here. The palace lord of the Linglong Palace Hall had made up his mind to make her stay. Yiqing Luo's lips curled slightly as her narrow eyes squinted as she withdrew her hand from the palace lord of Secluded Darkness Palace's hand. Linglong Palace Lord and the rest suddenly barged into the room. And they were aggressive. Yiqing Luo withdrew her hand and broke free from his restraints. Yiqing Luo swung her hand and raised her slender brows as she looked at Linglong Palace Lord with a smile which didn't look like a smile. "Palace Lord, what do you mean? Yiqing Luo, do you treat all of us as fools?" The Grand Judicial Officer's face sunk as he shouted furiously, "Since you arrived at Linglong Palace yesterday, you've been meeting him privately. Do you really think that we don't know anything?" The Grand Judicial Officer pointed at the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace. Following that, he sneered, "This person is not the Overlord. You're planning to do some shady business with this man in Linglong Palace behind the Overlord's back." These words sounded like they were filled with a sense of indignation and indignation. Yiqing Luo guessed that this Grand Judicial Officer might have been hurt in the past. Yiqing Luo glanced sideways at the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace and then looked at Linglong Palace Lord. The eyes of the Linglong Palace Lord were still fixed on the Palace Lord of the Secluded Darkness Palace. She let out a low chuckle that contained the sweetness and laziness of a young girl. "Perhaps you don't know who this person is, but the palace master should know who this person is." The topic shifted to the hall master. The first judicial judge and the third judicial judge's gaze immediately shifted to the Linglong Palace master. "I didn't expect that the person who had been following Miss Yi would be you." The Linglong Palace master did not deny it. Her face was cold, but a cold smile appeared on her face. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace obviously did not expect that the people from the Linglong Palace would discover his existence. Coincidentally, he was stopped in his tracks. His face under the black robe was somewhat gloomy. He speedily stood in front of Yiqing Luo, and his tall and slender figure completely hid Yiqing Luo behind him. When he got close to Yiqing Luo, he whispered, "I'm sorry." Then he turned to look at the Linglong Palace's hall master and emitted a sinister cold aura. His actions made the Linglong Palace master laugh. She raised her hand and covered half of her red lips as she laughed softly. "Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace, if I didn't investigate wrongly, you and Miss Yi should have a hostile relationship. Now, putting on a protective stance and standing in front of Miss Yi, don't tell me you've betrayed the Palace Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace?" You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.